widespread.
This morning.
I don't have a fancy we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order for our Finance Administration Committee tonight, November 14th, 6:30 now. And just a reminder, we do record and live streaming meetings, or if you know anyone that wants to, you can find it on YouTube. We've got a few items on the agenda tonight. The first one is a public presentation, informational update on our annual city audit. So Brian Scott, do you want to take us away?
Okay, well, the holidays are rapidly coming upon us, so everyone's thinking about turkey, Christmas presents. I'm thinking about the close of our fiscal year. Fun time for me. So our fiscal year does end December 31st of 2018, and we are beginning to prepare for our audit. So we'll do an audit in February for the 2018 fiscal year. And our auditor will actually start doing the initial field work next month. So with that, our auditor is here this evening to present to you kind of an initial letter of communication. The purpose of this letter is really just to outline their responsibilities with regards to the financial audit statement, plan, scope, and timing of the audit, and then any significant findings or issues from the audit, and generally just answering questions or concerns that you might have about the audit and the process that we go through. Emily Sheldon from Vice-Chairperson Company is here tonight. They're the audit firm that we engaged last year. So this will be our second year with them. We have a contract that was approved last year with 1 year with 3-year optional renewals. So this will be our second year with them. So with that, I'll hand it over to Emily.
Thank you very much, Brian. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Sheldon, and I am a manager with Burbage Training and Company. I am here tonight to present to you information related to the plan, scope, and timing of our audit of the City of Mission's financial statements. Audit standards require that we communicate this information to you in the form of a planning letter. If you'd like to read along as I provide an overview of the letter, a copy of the letter is provided in tonight's meeting packet, beginning on page 6. The first section of the letter discusses communication between our firm and the City Council. As part of our audit planning process, we will schedule a meeting, either in person or by phone, with the mayor to discuss the council's oversight of the effectiveness of internal control, any areas of concern that we need to be aware of in planning the audit, or any concerns about fraud. We also want you to know before we begin the audit that we will immediately communicate to City Council issues that arise in any of the following areas, including fraud involving senior management or other fraud that causes a material misstatement of the financial statements, instances of non-compliance with laws and regulations that come to our attention, disagreements with management, and serious difficulties encountered in performing the audit. At the conclusion of our audit, we will issue a letter to the City Council that communicates certain matters that are significant and relevant to you in your oversight of the financial reporting process. The second section of the letter discusses our independence policies and procedures that are in place to ensure that we remain independent in the audit services we are providing to the city. The third section of the letter discusses our audit planning process. The first step in our planning process is obtaining an understanding of the city's internal control. We use this understanding to identify certain risks in the city's operations and to tailor our audit approach. The fourth section of the letter discusses how we apply the concept of materiality to conducting our audit and how we use materiality in deciding whether to record an adjusting journal entry. At the conclusion of our audit, we will provide to the City Council any adjustments that were made, as well as any uncorrected misstatements that were not recorded. The fifth section of the letter explains that our audit of the city will include obtaining an understanding of internal control, but our audit is not designed to provide assurance on internal control, and we are not providing an opinion on the city's internal control. Finally, we will be visiting the city offices beginning on December 17th to perform our preliminary audit fieldwork as part of the audit planning process. The dates of audit fieldwork will be finalized by our audit scheduling committee, actually tomorrow morning, but we expect audit fieldwork to commence on February 18th. with that, do you have any questions?
February 18th,
Yes.
what does that entail at the beginning of that?
So our preliminary field work will be coming out to go over the planning forms is what we call them, but pretty much reviewing where we document the city's processes, procedures, internal controls, and we'll also be doing tests of controls on the main transaction cycles of the city, including payroll and expenditures or AP. So on February 18th when we come out, that's actually when we begin the audit field work, where we actually start testing the financial statements and the main factors of those.
That's President's Day. That's President's Day.
Oh.
We're open that day.
You are open,
Yeah.
okay. Double check.
Yeah.
And you're going to meet with this committee, right, at some point in time?
Yes.
And the audit's complete. We'll present the final report.
Not prior to that?
No.
This will be the meeting now. But
Yeah.
if you want to have an individual conversation with them, you can.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
All right, next up on our agenda tonight, we do have an action item to review employee benefit renewals for 2019. So Brian, you go ahead and explain on that.
Well, I come with good news. Last couple of years have been pretty difficult with us in terms of health insurance benefits in particular. We've seen some pretty sizable increases from our providers. We were with Aetna for many years. A couple of years ago, Aetna came back with a 26% increase, and we said, that's not going to work. So we went out to the market, and we wound up switching to Cigna, which gave us about a 4% increase in our premiums. And then last year, Cigna came back with nearly a 50% increase, and that's not going to work. So we went back out to the market again, and we switched to Blue Cross Blue Shield, which offers a 25% increase, which was a difficult pill to swallow, but we did, no pun intended, but we did. But this year, they are offering no increase to us. So that's good news. We had budgeted a 20% increase for health insurance in the 2019 budget, so that'll be a pretty sizable savings for us going into 2019. So yeah, no increase. Blue Cross Blue Shield is also offering a third plan. So if you remember last year, to kind of help with the impact for the employees, we opted to offer two plans. Sort of base plan, which is called Blue Select, and that is a plan that's been recently developed by Blue Cross Blue Shield, where they have identified providers in the metropolitan area and have negotiated with providers to offer steep discounts that they can in turn offer to the employer at reduced premiums. There's also a selected number of hospitals in the area. Kansas side is Shawnee Mission Hospital, Olathe, on the Missouri side is Truman Medical Center, and I think maybe one of the North Liberty Hospital. And actually, to our surprise, quite a few employees took advantage of that. So it's almost a 50-50 split number of employees took advantage of Blue Select versus the preferred care. This year, Blue Cross Blue Shield is offering a third plan, which incorporates Aspire Care. And the Aspire Care is actually a clinic. And so they have constructed two clinics on the Kansas side. One not too far from us in Shawnee Mission Parkway in the city of Shawnee. And then another one in Olathe. They have one under construction in Lee Summit, one under construction up in the Northland somewhere. I don't remember off the top of my head where. And the one they're proposing to build in downtown Kansas City, kind of around Midtown. And those will be open in 2019. And the idea of the Aspire Care is that an employee or employee's family member can go to the clinic, and that's pretty much their provider. So they can see a doctor, They can have x-rays done if they need to. They can have lab work done at the clinic. There's even specialists in mental health care available at the clinic. There are nurses that can help the employee arrange for a specialist if the employee needs to go see a specialist for further diagnosis or care. They can help the employee with any other medical needs, kind of a concierge type of service almost for the employee in terms of medical care. There's no out-of-pocket cost for the employee. There's no co-pay for the employee. They go directly to the clinic. So that's the savings the employee experiences. There's still, if they would like, they can go to a Blue Select provider. They prefer to do that. And then they have to, if they go to the clinic, they want to go into a specialist, they would go to a specialist within the Blue Select network, and as well as a hospital within the Blue Select network. So that's a big difference. We think that would be appealing to some of our employees. The premiums are about the same, but just the fact that the out-of-pocket costs are virtually none unless they go to a specialist can be very appealing. So we'd like to offer that to our employees in addition to the Blue Select and Preferred Care Blue. Moving on from health insurance, we have a wellness benefit program that we've offered to our employees for several years. This year next year actually, in 2019, we'd like to offer a $300 incentive for the employees that participate in the wellness program. There's about 16 to 12 or 13 employees on average that participate in the plan. So we figured that would be a cost of about $6,000 for the city. In addition, we'd be asking for $3,000 for a biometric screening as a part of the wellness program. And they'd have some lunch and learns. We can bring a professional in, nutritionist, or somebody that's a therapist, a physical therapist, somebody of that nature, provide some lessons to our employees on nutrition and stretching and exercising and so forth. So that'd be a total cost of $9,000 for 2019. In terms of dental benefit, we're continuing coverage with Delta Dental of Kansas. We have for a number of years, and they've been a very good provider for employees. Again, there's no cost increase proposed for 2019. And again, we'd be sharing the cost, as we do with health insurance, an 80-20 split, the city paying 80%, the employee paying 20%. That would be an impact on the city of approximately $43,000 for the 2019 budget. Vision benefit, we'd like to continue offering IMED. We switched to them a couple of years ago, and we've had pretty good results with them. This is a benefit that's paid 100% by the city, so it's free to our employees. And the impact for the 2019 budget would be approximately $9,200. Then in addition, we offer a flexible spending account for our employees. It's an opportunity where they can save some money, pre-tax dollars, for either medical expenses and or child care. So they deduct money out of their paycheck. Every pay period goes into an account that they can withdraw. It goes into that account pre-tax, and they can withdraw to pay for medical expenses or child care. That is at a cost to the employee. It doesn't cost the city other than the administrative costs for running the program. And that's
Brian, is that just offered to full-time employees or part-time as well?
Full-time.
And is that administered by staff, or is it?
It's administered by a third party.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a firm called Basic. They do this across the nation. So that costs to be about $2,650 for administration. Then we offer our employees standard life insurance and accidental dismemberment and death. Kind of gruesome. This is through standard. It's 100% paid by the city. A $25,000 benefit for department directors and a $20,000 benefit for employees. And the cost to the city would be approximately $2,600 for 2019. And then the employees have an option for voluntary life insurance buy-up with the standard plan. They can buy up to 5% of their annual salary at their cost. This would be no cost to the city, it would be a cost to the employee. be no impact on the 2019 budget for the buyout insurance. Then we also offer a voluntary supplemental insurance benefit through AFLAC. This would be additional insurance for lost wages when one is out on long-term or short-term disability, or additional insurance for maybe cancer or something like that. Then we have a retirement plan benefit through the Kansas Public Employee Retirement System for non-sworn employees, and the Kansas Police and Fire Retirement System for sworn police officer employees. This is required by state law to participate in this plan. For non-sworn, for the CAPERS plan, the coverage is 9.89% of the covered payroll. And then there's an additional 6% that the employee pays to participate in that plan. And then with the police officer plan, the KPNF, it's 22.13% of covered payroll that the city pays. And then the police officers pay 7.15% of the earnings into that plan.
Brian, is that 10% increase correct? There was a 10% jump this year. Do we have any understanding as to why? Was that to make up for unpaid?
Classification study, which is a big driver.
Well, no, or is this a state increase, or is this from the classification study, that 10% increase?
So the state looks at the employees' wages and they do an actuarial study.
Okay, so that percent is based on
Yeah,
that.
so then they tell us what the increase is going to be.
Got it.
So I think probably some of that's driven by the classification comp study. Some of that may be driven by pending retirements that are coming up.
Okay.
Sometimes it's...
We've had some significant retirement payouts, and that can impact the rates that we have. Gotcha. Significantly, usually for about a 3-year.
Okay.
So the city's cost for 2019 for participation in CAPERS and KPNF is $675,000. And then finally, we offer a supplemental retirement benefit for non-sworn employees, those employees that are other than police officers. This is through the principal plan, and it's 2% total earnings for employees that have worked here for more than a year, full-time employees. And that has a cost of about $42,000 for 2019. So, we get down to the grand total on page 8 of the memo that I provided in your packet. Total for health and welfare benefits is $826,450. Retirement benefits is $717,872. Employee unemployment insurance and FICA and workers' compensation is $512,000 for a grand total of $2,056,610 for 2019 for just benefits alone. And then we add that to the estimated salary costs in the budget, it comes to a grand total of $7,251,930. So our percentage of benefits to the total personnel cost is actually 28%, which is pretty good. Any questions about any of that?
On the wellness program, you know what the participation rate was last year?
It was 16 last year, and then it was 12 this year. And a couple of participants from last year are no longer with the city. So Christy and Danielle participated last year and are not with us this year.
Okay. Any thoughts about what we can do to increase the participation there?
Yeah, I struggle with that myself. We don't have a lot of police officers that participate. Not really sure what the reasoning is for that.
Well, they're all probably totally perfectly healthy, but
They probably are.
yeah.
Still, you'd think you'd want an incentive if you could, yeah. So, I don't know. I'll have to ask the employees what we can do to try and encourage a greater amount of participation.
I know this came up last year, and it just seems like it hasn't moved too much, and I think it's a pretty important thing.
All right.
Really help catch stuff early on. But,
And I don't think it's particularly onerous. You know, I did not participate this past year, simply
What would it have
because
taken to get you?
I have to change the date of my doctor's appointment. So I do my annual physical in the fall, so I called a month ago to schedule that, and they said, well, you're not eligible till December because my health insurance plan pays for that. Well, by then, the program is over. So what I'm going to do next year is schedule it in like February. So I can get the points. And that's a big chunk of it. It's almost 200 points right there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think it's a great update that our insurance costs are going to stay pretty steady. That's fantastic. As feedback from the staff, I'm pretty positive too with the plan changes we went through last year.
yeah.
And the savings just rolls back over to the general fund.
Correct. We've had real good luck with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I've worked with them in the past with another employer and had real good luck with them.
Great.
Same experience this year. So.
Move this forward on the agenda. Not here, on the regular agenda.
I would think that's probably
Not consent.
not consent. Yeah. Great. Thanks. And the next item that we have, hey, look, it's Brian again.
Hey, it's me.
It's an update on the Human Service Fund recommendations. So Brian, if you want to go ahead and update us.
The United Community Services of Johnson County, more commonly known as UCS, independent nonprofit corporation charged with coordinating and supporting various initiatives and programs that provide for the human service needs of Johnson County residents. One of these programs is the Human Service Fund, which provides a cost-efficient and accountable mechanism for local governments in Johnson County to support a number of services that help residents facing difficult circumstances. Last year, the Human Services Fund allocated $335,000 to 14 separate agencies in Johnson County, representing a commitment of 15 participating cities and the county itself. The city's contribution to the fund last year was $7,600. This year, the UCS board is recommending a total allocation of $339,801. This is an increase of $3,871, or 1%. The city of Mission's contribution will again be $7,600, and this has been budgeted in the 2019 budget. So, your approval, we would recommend approval of this, and then just got to check to UCS, and they will spend it accordingly.
And this is in line with the same participation year last year.
Yeah, we participated a number of years now.
How is the breakdown, how is the allocation calculated to the different cities?
What, the contribution by city or the
Yeah,
payouts that they?
No, by city.
Yeah, that thought crossed my mind tonight when I was reviewing all of this before the meeting.
Is it population?
It looks like it's by per capita. Yeah.
Okay.
With that said, Gardner will probably bump theirs up a little bit. Yeah.
Any recommendations?
Yeah, that's.
Take 10% of the-
Do you want to put it on consent agenda or? Yeah. Consent agenda.
Would you recommend it?
Can I have that?
Debbie, I'll give Debbie credit for that.
Brian, I think last year there was a representative from the Human Service Fund here,
Yes.
or is that person or someone from the organization here tonight?
Not this evening, no. Next month, I'll be coming back to you with a recommendation for the alcohol tax.
Okay.
And that representative was here last year to talk about that, because there's some questions about that. So if you'd like, I can invite her to come next month.
It's always good to hear about those programs.
Okay, you can do it.
Thanks.
All right, next up we have an action item from Chief Hadley to give us an update on the purchase of vehicle and equipment for our community service officer.
Let's talk about trucks. So earlier this year, you all approved the hiring of 2 community service officers for next year for the city of Mission. We're going to need to purchase a new truck and some new vehicles, or a new vehicle. So before you is about $63,608 that will account for a brand new Ford F-250 truck, tranquilizer gun, safety equipment, radios, portable radio, in-car radio, things of that nature. This is a brand new position and all brand new equipment. As we discussed before, that this position will have 2 full-time officers in it and will provide services to the other Northeast cities per contract. So before you, it is about a 60-day wait period from the time that we order that truck, the time that it gets here. Captain Self is here to answer any questions about the truck, or there's a containment system that goes into that truck, and he's happy to answer any of those questions. But all of this equipment is going to outfit 2 brand new officers, from boots to pants to raincoats, everything. Portable radios that we all carry, everything.
So this is in addition to the existing one that we have?
Right, everything that is animal control right now, once we get the new officers in, all of that stuff will be sold and then split per capita between the cities. So some of that money that will come back to the cities and the contractual part will also account towards some of this equipment.
So will there be 2 vehicles, or this will be the only vehicle?
We're going to use the animal control vehicle that's currently out there until this new one is built. So when it gets here, we have to put the cameras in, we got to put the tablets in, we got to put all the emergency equipment in it and get it ready to go.
Okay.
So
There'll only be one.
only one. Happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. It's 4-wheel drive.
It's got power locks and windows?
I believe so, and again, Captain Self's here if you guys have any questions about the containment system. Or you will notice that some of these are numbers that are rounded up, like the tranquilizer gun's $2,000. There's several different vendors that we use, and we were pushing up on the end of the year. A lot of these places change the price towards Christmas time or the start of the new year. So that's why you don't have an exact quote on most of that stuff. The truck is exactly what the truck is on that.
Is that a pretty hot Christmas gift?
Not the tranquilizer gun, yes.
I'd say recommend this for consent agenda.
Okay.
Not consent.
Not consent?
Not consent, okay.
Anyone else have any questions? Cool.
Thank you.
All right, we got a few other discussion items for tonight's agenda. Next up is an update on the non-discrimination ordinance. And Laura, I know you're a little hoarse, so we'll try to keep it brief. Let's go ahead and just quick update.
Thank you. I am almost without voice, so I apologize and please bear with me. I will just hit a couple of highlights that are included in the ordinance that was in your packet. And then I suspect there are a number of people here who would like to speak. If possible, could I see a show of hands of those who would like to speak tonight, just so. Okay. There will be, there's a sign-in sheet up here, and so we'll just ask you to give your name and the city of your residence when you do sign in. So we started our conversation around the non-discrimination ordinance at the October Finance and Administration Committee meeting, and it was moved forward for further discussion to this November meeting. The ordinance seeks to provide uniform protection prohibiting discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodation on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, disability, marital status, familial status, or military status. For purposes of the draft ordinance that's included in your packet, a business is any person or entity employing 4 or more employees, and rental housing is defined as real property consisting of 4 or more dwelling units. So those are the entities or persons or types of housing that the ordinance would apply to. Structured within the ordinance, there are a number of definitions, a declaration of policy, a specific section on description of unlawful practices in each of those categories: employment, housing, and public accommodation. And the ordinance also outlines the complaint and enforcement mechanism. Just generally, again, this ordinance is in draft form, but as presented this evening, the ordinance would provide an aggrieved person with the opportunity to file a complaint within 60 days of an alleged incident. The matter would then be investigated by an investigator who was appointed by the mayor with city council approval, who would be charged with the initial responsibility for reviewing and evaluating complaints. If the complaint was not able to be successfully conciliated or disposed of, the matter may be referred to a hearing officer who would also be appointed by the mayor with council approval, who would then conduct a hearing and make a determination. Any decision of the hearing officer could be agreed to district court in accordance with established procedures. The way the ordinance is currently drafted, recognizing that there are existing agencies and commissions with established processes and procedures for investigating complaints related to race, color, religion, national origin, sex, age, disability, marital status, familial status, or military status, that following the initial intake of a complaint, the city would assist that complainant in pursuing resolution through other established processes. Thereby, the city would only take on the responsibility of investigating and making a determination on discrimination claims based on sexual orientation or gender identity. We'll be happy to certainly answer any questions on other portions of the ordinance, but I think that kind of covers the basic structure and general outline and intent. I don't know, it's a pleasure of the committee to turn it over to public comment at this point.
Can I just ask, just as a point of record, we've received a number of emails and letters from individuals. Are those going to be tallied in terms of the pro, con?
And so we can certainly compile all of that information. We were still receiving emails and letters right up to the start of tonight's meeting, so certainly we can compile all of that.
And what I'm also interested in is differentiation of those in the city, their residents of the city.
Certainly. To the extent that we can distinguish that, we can determine whether they are Michigan residents or business owners or residents of outside communities. I don't know what the number you have. I think, do you want to start with a time limit and then ask people to come back? Or?
Yeah, I think at this time it'd be great to go to public comments. I'd like to ask that people try to limit any comments to approximately 5 minutes or less, just in the interest of time. And if we need some more time later, we can probably accommodate that. With that, we'll go ahead and open up to anyone who's got comments. If you want to speak, please step up to the podium. State your name and city for the record, please.
Good evening, my name's Suzanne Wheeler and I'm a resident of Mission for about the past 4 months. I stand before you tonight as fiance, a parent, a friend, a retired Army colonel, a combat veteran, a research and project manager at UMKC, a volunteer, a Christian, and a neighbor who happens to be a transgender woman and lesbian. I'm engaged to an amazing woman who's also here in the room tonight, who's an executive board member of the Mid-America Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. The board sits on the board of directors of her church and also the newest member of our homeowners association over in Millhaven. Thank you. Thanks so much. Told you I'm new. Because I work in Kansas City, Missouri, which is a city with a non-discrimination ordinance, I can do my employer my best without having to worry about being fired simply because of who I am. I can proudly display a picture of Marcia on my desk and not worry about being fired for that either. Marcia and I, when we initially started looking at our homes, we looked at Roeland Park. I wanted to stay on the Kansas City side because of tax purposes of being a veteran. Kansas is very nice to veterans. And we wanted to live in a community with a non-discrimination ordinance. So we initially looked in Roeland Park. We ended up selling in Mission because we got a great deal on a house over in Millhaven. But we did it with some reservations. Because everybody at the table needs to understand and in the room needs to understand that when we went to buy that house, the people who were selling that house right now, legally, could say, no, we don't want to sell to you because you're transgender and you're a lesbian couple. Luckily, that didn't happen. The sellers are amazing. They're very accepting and assured us that Mission was wonderfully open and accepting community. And so far, we've found that in almost every business that we've been in, and our wonderful neighbors over in Millhaven. Now, I just told you that I feel Mission's enormously accepting, so why are we even talking about a non-discrimination ordinance tonight? And the answer to that's simple. Everyone deserves the right to live without fear of discrimination, especially in the community that they desire to call home. And I want to harken back again to the story where we were worried about even buying a house in Mission as we started and what other people would think. And if you think that this doesn't happen, all you need to do is look nationally at some of the statistics. As a transgender woman, 57% of my peers report unemployment discrimination, 26% lost a job, they're twice as likely to be unemployed, and 15% were refused housing. And hopefully that paints a picture of why we were worried about that. We see this discrimination happen to our friends, and Marcia and I have both personally experienced discrimination, luckily not here in the community of Mission yet. I served our country for 32 years in defense of the Constitution, fundamental right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that the Constitution enshrines. I take the concept of religious freedom very, very seriously. And as I stated earlier, I'm a Christian, and I'm very active in my congregation. And, believe it or not, I celebrate the right of others to not endorse who I am. But employing my skills and renting a home to me in exchange for money is not an endorsement of my lifestyle. It's a business transaction. Another's right to believe and live by their own values does not allow them the right to overtly discriminate against members of our community who they happen to disagree with because of those value systems. I've read the ordinance that we're talking about tonight multiple times since it was released, and I highly recommend that the council forwards it for further consideration. Mission needs to send a message loud and clear that discrimination is not acceptable in this beautiful city. And with that, concludes my statement.
Can we ask a question? Sure.
Hi, Ben.
My name's Ken Davis. I have a question. Could you discuss a little bit about your experience with regards to public facilities? I know that one of the issues that's come up in some of the correspondence that we received is about our existing public facilities and their accommodation for you or anyone with transgender identity, and how would you recommend we handle that?
Well, first I'm going to answer or ask a question. Where would you recommend that I use the restroom? As I stand here and present in front, and that's a hypothetical question. Where would you recommend that I use the restroom as I stand here in front of you? I use public restrooms, and I travel a lot for my job. I've traveled all over the world, and I have as I present before you now. And I have never had an issue in a public restroom. I go in there, I don't know what everybody else goes in there for, but I go in there to use the restroom, wash my hands, and leave. Maybe fix my makeup, and that is it. So again, I think a lot of times that the restroom situation really gets blown way, way out of proportion. I just want to be able to go do something that most every other human does.
I guess to maybe add to what Ken was asking a little bit, we have a pool here, and we've got our community center with an indoor pool and locker room facilities, and maybe just looking for some guidance on those situations too, when people have to go in and change the shower or
for those of you who happen to go to Planet Fitness and use Planet Fitness, I use the facilities there. I've never had an issue. Again, I go into a locker room, I don't traipse around naked 99% of the time. I go to the shower, I take my stuff to the shower, I get dressed, I leave. I respect other people's privacy, and I expect them to respect mine as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. While I sign in, I'll remind you that my name is John Harris. I am not a resident of Mission. I'm a resident of Westwood, your neighbor to the northeast. And I spoke to you at the October 3rd meeting. At the October 3rd meeting, I spoke to you just as a private citizen, and I hadn't planned to speak, but tonight I did plan to speak. And I'm speaking to you in a more formal capacity. I'm going to speak to you on the behalf of the Mid-America Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. I'm a member of the board of directors. And for the second time in a row, I'm going to refer to Marcia Riley, who's in the audience. She's also on the board of the chamber, and in fact this year became our treasurer. So the Mid-America Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce is based here in Kansas City. We're about 6.5 years old. We have over 400 members, almost all of them in the greater Kansas City metropolitan region. And by my last count, there are 6 members in the city of Mission. And in fact, you might hear from them tonight. The Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce here in Kansas City advocates, promotes, and facilitates the success of the LGBT business community. Our purpose is to create, identify, and enhance business opportunities for the LGBT and LGBT-friendly organizations and foster overall a more inclusive and vibrant economy in Mid-America. So if we think about that from a policy point of view, one of the main ways we want to do that is to ensure that all individuals are able to participate in the broad market economy. For that reason, and I'm reading from our 2018 public policy platform, for that reason we support an open marketplace that respects and serves all customers regardless of a number of factors, but of course including sexual orientation or gender identity. And we believe that in order for our community and all levels of government to thrive, we should not be implementing artificial barriers that alienate individuals or prevent them from receiving products and services. And that includes barriers premised on religious freedom. So to some, as a business organization, we believe in full access to the broad market economy. So we are very much in favor of this non-discrimination ordinance, and we appreciate your time and consideration. To close real quick, the Chamber did deliver a letter of support, a formal letter of support to you, but I think it came in right before your October 3rd meeting, and may not have made it into the material. So if any of you did not see that letter, please let me know, and Laura, I'm not sure if you saw it or not. I'm happy to get it to you again.
Don't recall if you could send it again.
I will certainly do that. Are there any questions?
Is Westwood considering anything similar right now?
So I'm going to take off my hat as a board of director of the chamber. I'm not going to talk to you as a resident of Westwood. No, we are not formally discussing that, but, and you might be aware of this, there was some discussion among some of the mayors at the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation breakfast a couple weeks ago. And so I will say that it is on the radar of the mayor of Westwood, John Ye, and it is on the radar of several of the council members, including me. And as I think I said last time, I will not be surprised if it does, come to our attention over our next couple of meetings. I think it's safe to say that Westwood and some of the other cities, are kind of watching to see how these conversations unfold. The notion of enforcement is a bit of a challenge for some cities, particularly the smaller cities. And Westwood is not even the smallest city in Northeast Johnson County. So I think there's a little bit of a wait and see to see how some of the larger cities with kind of more minds and resources kind of figure out some of the language, which I read the ordinance earlier. I think you guys have a good solution. So no, not yet, but soon.
Sure. Can you speak to anything that your chamber is doing to advocate this at the state level?
Great question. So the Mid-America Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce is partnered with 2 rights organizations in the state of Kansas, Equality Kansas and HRC, Human Rights Commission, in the KC metro area. And we are in full support of protections at the state level. And as city staff and legislators, you probably have thought about this. It would frankly be a lot simpler for us at the local level if this was handled at the state level. So we are in full favor of that, but that has not happened at the state level. And I'm about to kind of drift a little too far into how the makeup of the state house has changed a little bit. It probably won't happen anytime soon. But yes, the chamber is in favor of protections, and I kind of made a reference to this, at all levels of government.
So nothing being actively pursued or trying to work with the state at this point?
Not at this point, but over the next couple of months as we come up to the legislative session of the state of Kansas, we'll probably, not probably, we will be having conversations with those two organizations I referred to, specifically Equality Kansas, because Equality Kansas has a full-time lobbyist in the State House who can support us.
I have a question. One of the discussions that we've had in regards to this is the whole matter of enforcement. What's the practical aspect of enforcing? I think that we, at least I'll speak for myself, are supportive of the principle. The question is the mechanism for adjudicating or making a decision if some complaint is brought forward and then try to determine whether and how to interpret discrimination of identity. And I was just wondering if that's been any discussion with the chamber along those lines, or trying to deal with this matter of how would an investigator go about making that determination where there's not a definition that's very clear.
So again, I was reading a moment ago, and I'll hold up for you, the Chamber's public policy platform. The Chamber is very clearly in support of such an ordinance, but we don't go as far as to prescribe or suggest an enforcement mechanism. However, I noticed in your packet from last time, you were provided some suggestions for enforcement mechanisms from another organization, Human Rights Campaign, HRC. And they have long kind of suggested 4 enforcement mechanisms. The one that it appears you have chosen in your language, and again I looked at it earlier tonight, is to identify, I might get some of the wording wrong, but essentially identify an investigator person who will go research the claim, maybe even attempt to reconcile it on their own. If not, kind of follow a process up. I'm speaking purely on personal opinion. For a city the size of Mission, that seems to be a good mechanism. One of the other most common mechanisms that is in place sorry, I lost my train of thought. Olathe is a Human Rights Commission. That is quite a more kind of mechanism and process around it. For a city the size of Olathe, that might make perfect sense. At the state level, the state of Kansas enforces its non-discrimination language, which again doesn't include sexual orientation and gender identity, through an HRC also. But I think for a city the size of Mission, kind of what you've chosen is probably a pretty logical approach. And again, let me be clear, I'm speaking as an individual on these opinions, not on behalf of the chamber.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello. My name is Don Carroll. I graduated from Shawnee Mission North in 1969, before most of you were born. I left Kansas City for 23 years and went to Manhattan, but I moved back to Mission in 1991 and bought a home. So I've been a resident here since 1991. My husband and I have been together for 23 years, and one of the things that really impressed me about Mission that a lot of you might not know is shortly after Sylvester Powell Community Center opened, we went to buy a membership, and I inquired about getting a family membership, and the person said, I said, can a couple get a family membership? And the person I was talking to, she said, I don't know. So she made a phone call, and she said, well, you're supposed to be married to have a family membership. And at that point in time, you could not legally get married. And I said, well, we can't get married. And she repeated that. And pretty soon she hung up the phone and she said, you can have a family membership. So right away, Mission was pretty inclusive, and that was 20 years ago. One thing that I like to point out when you consider an ordinance like this is I worked on a master's in social work at KU, and I did some research on teen suicide. And the number one or number two reason for teen suicide at all times has to do with sexual orientation issues. And the shame that people feel for being gay or lesbian or transgender that they have learned from their churches and from their families and from their communities. It's unfortunate that we live in a society where we have to legally protect the rights of minorities. But there are many people in this country that wouldn't want to employ someone that was black or of a different race and wouldn't do so if it wasn't legally required. And that is something that I think we need to do. But it breaks my heart every time I hear a story of a young person that has committed suicide because they are ashamed of who they are. And I think we need to work to change the culture in this country and our city so that young people who genetically have been created with gay or lesbian or transgender tendencies feel welcome and loved in their community. And that's kind of the gist of my comments.
Thank you.
Well, I do have one more thing. For people that have a religious objection to a sexual non-discrimination ordinance, I'm a Christian. I'm very active in my church. I belong to a church where my husband and I are allowed to serve communion as a couple. There are different beliefs, but I do know that the same Bible that has a handful of verses of discriminating or talking about homosexuality being a sin has hundreds of verses about the sin of divorce and that people that are adulterers should be stoned to death. And I am overwhelmed by the fact that some people who call themselves Christians can pick and choose portions of the Bible that they think can't be changed, but can totally disregard others.
Good point.
Steve Sean Gert, 5703 West 53rd Street. I feel kind of outnumbered here. And I didn't know if I was going to come here and talk, so excuse me if it's a little disorganized. I just wrote this out this morning. So, but I think we all can agree that the City of Mission is fair and a very caring place. I heard the Colonel say it. Colonel, and thank you for your service. Appreciate it. And Mission believes that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. I think when I was mayor here at Mission, we worked very hard at that, getting unity, treating everyone the same. Not elevated, not lower, but the same. I met with Laura every day to see, she just shook like that. Oh, bad memories. But every day, in case there was somebody that had a complaint or didn't think their voice was being heard or, you know, whatever. But anyway, and I know Ron feels the same way, you know, that we want unity and we treat everyone the same. And I don't think anybody is suggesting that we aren't that way. I mean, you know, and no one has said there has been any discrimination in the city of Mission that I know of. I've never heard anybody say anything. But ordinances like this can have unintended consequences. For example, in Anchorage, Alaska, a woman's shelter is being forced to either let men who identify as female, which is fine, but to gain entrance and sleep in the women's sleeping quarters, or shut the facility down. Yeah, that's not right. And so we have to be careful and think of all the things that can happen that some people might do, and they'll take everything to court. You know, this law raises serious concerns about people's privacy and safety, especially women and children in facilities like Mission Pool and the community center. We should all be against unjust discrimination, no doubt. Like I said, I don't know of any time in Mission, I don't know anybody that's ever said anything. I can't remember. And I've lived here a long time. I went to my age, 69. But we should not pass laws like this that raise such serious concerns. My idea, actually it wasn't my idea, but it sounded like a really good one someone mentioned, was a resolution instead of an ordinance. And we can say how we feel and how we expect the city to act. You know, this is our city, and this is, you know, we treat everyone the same. We don't have any discrimination. And a resolution would protect our residents against the very few. But unfortunately, you can't really tell, you know, if somebody's transgender or if he's just a predator. You know, I mean, there is no, you can say anything to gain access. I'm not saying a transgender is a predator. Please do not, I am not saying that at all. I'm saying there are predators in this world, and they could act like they were to gain entrance into the community center, into a locker room, whatever. So, that's all I have to say. I just would please consider, council, and I sure appreciate all your work and everything you do for this city. Please consider the resolution when you're discussing this issue. Thank you for letting me talk.
Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
The way that the current ordinance is worded, it allows an investigation to take place of any circumstance that's brought to the attention or as a complaint. Do you not believe that that process would be sufficient to handle this on an individual case-by-case basis?
Well, I mean, I think it could be a lot of expense, and could, I don't have, just like the Anchorage, I don't have any paperwork on it. I mean, it's public record. But also in the state of Washington, I think it was Washington, there was 25 complaints, and all of them were, none of them went to court, I guess what I'm saying. They all,
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, we have a municipal court that handles a lot of situations that are sort of dicey and require a case-by-case analysis of what's going on.
Yeah.
Why would this not be any different than that?
I don't know what you're getting at, Ken. I mean, what did I say that was contrary to
what
that?
you're proposing is that somebody could become, act as a predator.
We've had people in the community center that, you know, we've had to.
Right. So the question is, why would that not be treated the same way in terms of investigation?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Analysis, no different than any other situation.
No, it would just give access. I mean, you would have, if men could go into the village locker with children in there, with, you know, You don't know really if he's transgender or if he's just a predator looking for children. I mean, there's bad people out there.
I think it's important though to note that the gender or the sex isn't the problem, the person is the problem.
Yes, exactly.
And there's laws protecting people against harassment in bathrooms if there's voyeurism or anything else that's a problem.
Well, sure, we want to get them
not the
before the
gender or
fact,
sex.
not after they're accused, is my concern.
Right.
That was,
I guess what I was looking for from you is a recommendation in terms of our enforcement recommendations, but what is in there right now, would that not suffice, or how do you think that it could be addressed? in a way that would be
I
more
just think
meaningful?
we've never had any problems in Mission. There's never been anything that's come up that people were discriminated against. I mean, we've all said it. I mean, everybody up here said they love Mission, and it is. Mission's great, great people. We don't care, you know, it's your business is your business. I am a big safety person. Laura can attest to that. Safety comes first with me, and this came out, and I thought, wow, you know, I mean, it just seems like this is a little overkill, I guess, the ordinance. You know, it seems like a resolution stating how we feel and, you know, how we expect people to act towards people that live in Mission, come visit Mission. You know, everybody's treated the same. We don't discriminate. And that stuff gets around. If somebody does not rent a house to anybody, it gets around, and that person is not well received.
Resolution doesn't have any teeth.
No, it doesn't. But it states our intent.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Charlie Trapito. Be thankful I didn't send you an email. You would be. However, there's opportunity after this meeting. I just wanted to say that I encourage you to think about some words. Justice, empathy, and equality while you're considering this ordinance. And I also recall from Steve, you prompted me to think of this. When I went to parochial school, what I remember the most was saying, whoever shall do whatsoever unto me or unto the least of them, you will do unto me, or something like that. That's the end of my contribution, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And I'll send you that email.
My name is Karen Schneider, and I live at 55th and Barclay. I'm really disappointed that our former mayor got up here and made inflammatory statements with no facts to back them up. Transgender women deserve to be as protected as any other woman in a facility if she's being abused. My daughter was harassed when she went to the women's restroom at the Target in Mission because she looks like a boy. So she will wear a big flower in her hair so people know that she's a girl.
I didn't try to be that way. I'm sorry if I sounded that way. I was not my intent.
If you had brought facts with you, it would have been a different...
Can you address
Sorry. If there were facts presented, it would have been a different story, but I feel like it was just inflammatory statements. If gender and sexual identity weren't in this clause, would there be this big of a problem with it? What about a woman who walks into a restaurant with a headscarf on and they won't serve her? Is that not the same thing? I feel like this ordinance needs to be passed so that we can protect everyone, not just transgender and people with sexual identity differences. We need to be able to protect everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
As I'm writing, my name is Michael Ney. I am a resident of Mission off of Foxwoods Drive in Ward 3. I did speak at the last meeting when this ordinance was brought up, and I'm just seeing a couple counselors that weren't able to make it that day and some new faces in the crowd. I kind of wanted to reiterate what I said, maybe a little less shaky since I kind of thought I had more this time. I guess I just want to start with a bit of a hypothetical question for the heterosexual members here. Have you ever had to think of, second guess, whether at work or out in public, about sharing bits of your personal life, including your spouse, or if you're dating anybody, sharing anything about them, their name, their pronouns, what you did, this sort of thing? Because that's something that I constantly think about at a new job. I just recently started one in Kansas City in May, and that was always a guess. I know in Kansas City even has the ordinance. It's still always in the back of my mind because I always have that guard up. Even when looking for housing, I've been in Mission for 3.5 years. I was fortunate enough to not have any problems. My accommodations have been really well accepted, and I do love it in Mission. And I just want to urge the passing of this ordinance because I feel like nobody should have to go through the indignity and the humility of being denied services for who you are. I've had friends experience that, and my heart just breaks for them because without any sort of legal recourse, that can continue to happen to people. And that is an embarrassment that nobody should have to face just for trying to live their lives and seek just regular accommodations, housing, employment. So I would love to urge the council members to pass this ordinance and, just put it in writing and give an enforcement mechanism for your constituents should this unfortunate kind of circumstance were to arise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Peters, and I am a resident of Olathe, not Mission, but I started an LGBTQ youth group that serves the entire Johnson County area. So a lot of those kids do come from Mission. We've had about 100 kids come through our program in the last year. We meet one evening a week. Each week we'll have about 25 to 35 kids between the ages of 12 and 20, and about more than 90% are transgender. A lot of them are 16 and they're getting really excited about getting a job and being able to contribute to society, but they don't know how that's going to work for them because they can legally be denied employment. So what name do I put on the application? When do I say that? Do I say it before I get the job? Do I say it after? Because if I say it after and they fire me, there's nothing I can do. Over half of all LGBT youth that come out to their parents face a negative rejection. They could be kicked out, they could be abused, and so all they can hold on to is waiting until the day they turn 18 so they can get out of their house, and now a landlord could tell them that they can't have a place to live. There's absolutely no federal, state, or local laws that prevent discrimination in public place, so if they go to Target trying to spend their money, trying to help build the economy here, they can be asked to leave. And as for religious freedom and non-discrimination are completely compatible. They are not contradictory values. Religious freedom is well protected in the U.S. We have the First Amendment. We have existing religious exemptions with the Civil Rights Act and Fair Housing Act. And there are no people in any states with LGBTQ inclusive non-discrimination protections that have lost the ability to worship as they choose. In regards to localities that already have these ordinances, the Williams Institute in 2012 did a survey, and the results showed that there was widespread compliance without resistance. Only 1% reported some minimal resistance to the new ordinance, and once it was explained to them what the expectations were, they followed them as well. None of the localities that added sexual orientation or gender identity reported that doing so was an administrative burden or resulted in any additional costs. None of the localities hired additional staff to enforce the ordinances. Right now, there's at least 93% of Fortune 500 companies that have company-wide policies to protect their employees. And Trulia is an app and a website that gives people information on houses and rentals in certain neighborhoods. Well, they've added a section of their page that will tell you if that neighborhood you're looking at has any ordinances to protect you from discrimination. And this new generation coming up, they're going to be looking at that. And if they see no, they're not going to come here and build a family here. As for one other point I wanted to state, you probably haven't heard of discrimination because it's not illegal. So I don't know who's going to report it to anyone and where they would even report it. I hear about it. Like every single night, I hear about it in their chat. They message me. One kid right now is being told by his parents that they hate him because he's trans. And I was trying to talk to him while I was sitting over there. I mean, the safety of kids, the mental hospital in Johnson County put a big sign outside one of the kids' door after they were there because of a suicidal ideation and wrote, "No roommates, transgender." So as if they didn't feel like crap already and like they didn't belong, now they really didn't. So those are the kids we need to protect. And that's all I have to say.
Hello, I'm Joel Marquardt, 5021 Clark Drive. As some of you know, I was the former mayor in Roeland Park just 10 months ago, I guess. And I will say that Mayor Schoengert and I had a great relationship, probably one of my favorite mayors. We had a wonderful time, and it made the process enjoyable. I'll just say that we had passed the ordinance. I personally was very happy with that. Didn't have any problems. There were no issues, no money spent. I respect everyone for their views, even though I might be totally in a different realm than that. But everybody comes by their views from where they, you know, their upbringing, what their parents told them, what their church was telling them. So I don't disregard anybody's viewpoints. I'll just say mine, and I really believe this is important. I went to a church or a temple 3 weeks ago, and someone I didn't even know came up to me and thanked me for what we did in Roeland Park. 4 years ago, people continue to come and thank me, and I'm sure there are those who are very upset with me in Roeland Park for what we did. They haven't voiced their opinion, and I don't want them to feel in a minority either. It's not a perfect ordinance. There are things I would probably like to figure out with that too, but we all do the best we can. And anyway, I thank you for your time, and I thank you for considering it.
Thank you.
So my name is Jared Owsley. I am not a resident of Mission. I reside in Marion, Kansas, but I do represent a portion of Mission in the Kansas State House as I represent House District 24. I actually just got here from the Council of Mayors meeting where non-discrimination orders were not on the agenda, but I felt it important for me to come and speak my support for this. I attended Merriam's City Council meeting when we were discussing a similar ordinance just last month, and it went over surprisingly well. I am no more prepared to speak today than I was then, so you'll have to apologize as I bounce around from my chicken scratch notes. But You know, the bathroom has been brought up, and I cannot help but think that, you know, that was used in the Kansas State House as a threat, that if Democrats got in the way of anything else, we were going to bring up this bathroom bill, and it is unnecessary. And on that note, I would also state that I'm the father of 3 kids. I've got a 13-year-old girl and a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old boy. And my 7-year-old boy, the last time we were at the movie theater just recently this weekend, he came out of the bathroom and just looked stark. And I asked him, you know, if he had an accident in the bathroom. Well, indeed, he did not have an accident in the bathroom, but there was a woman standing there that came up and said, you know, I apologize, I can explain this. My son has autism, and it happens often when he goes to the bathroom. I had to use the restroom. When I went into the restroom, there was a grown man with his pants around his ankles at the urinal, and my 7-year-old boy was a little bit shocked. No harm, no foul, no nothing. You know, when Mission does the holiday lights or holiday nights and festive sites, you know, we have Johnny on the Spots or porta potties there, and they're non-gender identities. So I really think that that's a moot point. You know, Roeland Park did this 4 years ago. KCK just recently did this as a unified government unanimously. Passed just, I want to say, within the last 3 months, and my time frame may be a little bit off on that, but it was overwhelmingly supported. At the state level, we do have our incoming governor-elect has decided that she was going to have pre-drafted the executive order that puts back into place employee protections for sexual orientation and identification. That was an executive order underneath Catherine Sebelius that Governor Brownback rescinded, I want to say, in 2015. So I can say that that's one of the first things on our governor-elect agenda of things to get accomplished. Equality Kansas does have a prominent presence in the State House and has worked closely with us on several bills. Most recently was the Adoption Protection Act that was strongly opposed by chambers of commerce and business, not only in the state of Kansas but across the nation. They came and spoke out loud about it. This is bad for business. So I'm happy to see members of the Chamber of Commerce here in support of this non-discrimination order. Enforcement. It's hard to enforce what there is no law in place to protect. So reporting doesn't often happen if there's no law being broken. And Mr. Councilman, I appreciate you bringing up the point that a resolution is non-binding, because if you just want to feel good about it, go ahead and pass a resolution. If you want to do something about it, have something that is enforceable. However, the City of Mission decides to, I would be supportive of that. The teen suicide that was brought up is a really big deal. You know, teen suicide is on the rise for multiple reasons, and certainly sexual orientation and identification is one of them. You know, we can worry about what can happen, what might do this and that, but each day we drive on the highway, we put on our safety belt, you know, and we do everything we can to maintain safety for ourselves, and I think that this is no less in protecting safety for all the residents in this City of Mission. I guess I can close on that. So I'd stand for questions if there are any.
Representative Ousley, I just have a couple of questions. First, on the executive order, just to clarify, that would only provide protections to state employees. Is that right?
That is correct.
And then we also have a letter from your counterpart in the Senate, Senator Boyer, who's told us that, in her opinion, Kansas will not be protecting any such protections anytime soon on a statewide level type NDO. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would agree with that. After the recent elections, I don't think that the will wasn't there before the recent elections, that we lost some key members that would have been supportive of such a measure.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good evening. My name's Andy Sandler, 6339 Beverly. 20-year resident of Mission. My in-laws were residents of Prairie Village, because when they first went to look for a house,
they weren't allowed to live in Leawood because they were Jewish. How far we've come since then. It would seem to me that gender identity, that sexual orientation are probably the last things that are necessary to cover under our laws, and the state won't do it, as Representative Owsley stated earlier. The state won't do it. They are going to be the last. So it's up to the cities and the towns to do that and lead the way. And I know a lot of people who are of a more conservative nature believe that home rule is really important. So why wouldn't it be incumbent upon our municipalities to lead the way in this situation? So I'm very, very glad that we've gone from if to when and how at this point. And I'm very, very pleased that the ordinance has been drafted and it's up for discussion and eventual passage. Councilman Davis, you took the words right out of my mouth along with the teeth when you said, yes, a resolution has no teeth. And all it basically is a smiley face. And we know what a smiley face without any teeth looks like. It's not pretty. Anyway, the main thing that I want to say goes back to what the good Colonel said earlier. The Declaration of Independence mentions life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as our unalienable rights. And the pursuit of happiness is really what this is all about. This is a civil rights issue at its heart. Pursuit of happiness doesn't necessarily mean happiness, but we are guaranteed the right to pursue happiness, and that is the pursuit of happiness with the person with whom you choose to do it. And it's not up to us to decide with whom to do it. And anybody who would deny that person or persons the right to pursue happiness with the person of their choice doesn't quite get the message. And so I would urge you, again, to make this a matter of when and how, and no longer a matter of if. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I actually have notes, what do you know? After listening to everyone, though, I'm going to ignore my notes. My name is Kevin Fullerton. I'm a 21-year resident of Mission. I'm also a business owner here in Mission, and I'm the president of the Mission Business Association. Now, I'm here on behalf of myself. I'm not speaking for the association or other business people. I just want to make that clear before I get started. So one of the things that I've heard a lot about, I've heard it tonight and I've heard it before, is do we need this here in Mission? Is it really a problem here in Mission? Well, I'm white, I'm male, I'm heterosexual, I'm Christian, I'm middle class, I'm a business owner. What the hell do I know about discrimination? I don't have any kind of discrimination at me. So when people ask, is it a problem here? I don't see it because it's not directed at me. I don't necessarily see it happening to my family members because it's not directed at them. A lot of discrimination is subtle. It's not necessarily overt and out there. It has a tendency to come in from the sides. So it's, to the point earlier, can you put up pictures of your spouse? You know, are you maybe not given service at a place? Or maybe are you followed around because they're worried about what you're going to do? Do you walk in and they think, oh, he's a predator or he's something like that? You've got all those kinds of things going on. So most of us here cannot identify with that kind of discrimination that they face. Like I said, it's subtle. Mission's a great place. I love Mission. You know how much I love Mission. I'm here all the time. So now I also want to talk to you as a business owner, because that's the other thing that people talk about. How will it affect the businesses? How will we enforce this kind of thing? Well, for the businesses, this is good for the businesses. If I want to talk cold numbers, because I'm an advertising guy, so I can do that, The LGBT community has a $1 trillion purchasing power. They have 14% of the disposable income, even though they're only 7% of the population. We have 1.4 million LGBT business owners. How's this not good for business? This is very good for business. We want people coming to downtown Mission. We want people coming here. We want to be LGBT friendly, not just friendly, welcoming. It shouldn't be about we don't allow that to happen. We welcome you here. We believe you're deserving of respect, that you're deserving of our attention, that you are welcome into our community. This is Mission. This is how we do things. I'm looking to you as our leaders to say, we don't allow this. We are going to draw a line here, because can't we all agree that if we can draw a line anywhere, it's on discrimination, and that discrimination shouldn't happen? And it sure as hell shouldn't happen in our city. This city's too good. So I'm looking at you as our leaders to say, we won't allow that. We're going to draw the line here, and we're going to say, this is Mission, this is how we do things, and you're all welcome here in Mission. Thank you.
It's pretty good without your notes.
What's that?
Pretty good without your notes.
Someone wants to read it, they say something.
I'm Gail Robertson. I live in Mission. I live off of Rock Creek Lane over by the Gateway Project, which excitingly is moving, and thank you all for that. I do have notes because I've been writing as this is happening. I did not prepare anything before today. I am a clinical psychologist. I work with young children and adolescents, and so some of the data points I'm going to give you are legitimate, factual evidence that come from a large number of resources, okay? But I want to be really clear, okay? Allowing an individual in this community to have non-discrimination as a part of their life is so important, okay? The issue on the table today is not about utilizing facilities or bathrooms or anything of that nature, okay? It's not even about women's shelters up in Alaska, okay? Non-discriminating ordinances, like Hillary said, do not allow people to assault other people, simply put. It doesn't suddenly get rid of those kind of things, those kind of laws, okay? But it does bring up fear. And we as a community are going to be pushed with fear, okay? People are going to bring opposition that is fear-based, okay? And that's the only opposition we've ever heard so far in the two discussions. I anticipate when this goes up for vote, which it will, I fully expect that from our community, that there is going to be a lot more fear-based facts, okay? So, things I want you guys to know. That fear is based on the idea in our culture that people with penises will rape other people. Not true. I can assure you there are a huge number of people in here that would say that's not true, okay? The other part of that is that people with penises will assault women, people without penises. Not true, okay? 1 in 4 women are raped or assaulted. That is a fact of our existence. But let me give you some other facts. 50% of people in the LGBTQ group are also assaulted. They are assaulted at a higher rate than cis or heteronormative individuals, okay? And they are not just assaulted by other LGBTQ people, they are assaulted by everybody, okay? Sexually assaulted. So this idea that somebody could enter a bathroom and assault another person is absolutely true. But that is a person assaulting a person. It has nothing to do with the fact that they have a penis or not, okay? So take that off the table. Just know that that's not true. The other part of this, okay? 50% of LGBT people are assaulted on a daily basis. Not sexually assaulted, assaulted in harassment type ways. Think about your day. That would mean that 3 times a week you come across something small that tells you you can't be who you are. Something small. You go to a bathroom and you see a sign that says, only women. Okay? My church has a sign. I go to Shawnee Mission Unitarian Universalist Church. It says all genders can use whatever bathroom they think that they should use. Okay? Your choice. Also, at the bottom of that sign, for the women or men's bathroom, because it was originally a school, we haven't gotten that far, we only have 2 bathrooms in that area, whatever. We have to put a sign up, right? So we can't afford to build a bathroom. At the bottom of that sign it says there's an all-gender bathroom right up there, and it gives you directions on how to get to it, right? But the key is that you can enter the bathroom if you want to. Who cares? Because it's not about what gender or sex you have, about whether or not you're going to assault somebody. That should not even be on the table, it shouldn't even be a discussion because it is fear-based, okay? Another part of this. 10% of LGBTQ individuals, by the time they are 21 years old, will commit suicide. They will die by suicide, okay? That's in our community, that's out on the national level, okay? That is 3 times higher than a typical non-LGBTQ individual. We can help protect our kids in our community by telling them that they are welcome here, okay? That is so important to me, and it is beyond all else, okay? In my opinion, the health and the safety and the life of our kids, I don't care what law we have to put in place. We want to have unicorns every Friday, let's do it, right? If it stops a kid from dying by suicide, would you really say no? I want to be very clear, as a personal member of Mission. I, as a bisexual, queer woman, and the people in my LGBTQ community are at higher risk of assault, okay? We're at higher risk of sexual assault. The stats and statistics tell us so. I'm at higher risk of discrimination every single day. I'm very fortunate to work in a business that does not discriminate against me. Fortunate. Thank you. Now, I'm also confident that if I were sexually assaulted, that I could go to the law. And it would go as well as it's going to go. And I trust our law enforcement officers that if I were to report a sexual assault, that would be handled appropriately. Okay? How we enforce this is a true question. I absolutely agree. But I want to be able to live my life without any type of assault. And I want any kids that I raise here to be able to live without assault. And I want that to be very clear that it's not just sexual assault. That I want to be able to go to a restaurant, to down to Max, to go to any place in Mission, and I'm not going to be assaulted. Okay? Questions? Thank you.
I mean, I think to be clear, we already have laws on the books that protect against assault.
Absolutely. We have them for
everybody.
physical. We have them for physical assault. If somebody dismisses me from a facility, it is a form of assault. It is saying you are not valued in this place. Just being very clear. I can't go to a law enforcement officer and say that. I'm just going to be really clear. That's a type of assault. Okay? To be told that I can't live in the place that I live, it's a form. It's not sexual, it's not physical, but it is a form of assault. Other questions?
Thank you.
Last time when I addressed you all, I spoke from a very clinical standpoint. I'm a social worker, and I provided some commentary based on some statements that were made that were about identifying sexual identity or gender identity as a choice.
I'm sorry, just for the record, can we have your name?
Sure, excuse me. I wrote it down and then didn't say it. My name is Caroline Dawson. I live in Ward 1. I live on Dearborn. I made those statements last time. And I sent you all an email that I would describe as fairly graphic. And similarly, I don't recall your name, you spoke as a white male. There are a few things that perhaps some of us have experienced in terms of trauma in our own community, in terms of discrimination. And as a white woman who wears a wedding ring, there's lots of assumptions that could easily be made about me and my identities. And I speak from a place of privilege in that I am able to walk around as a woman and be seen as a woman. And I am, and I have all the parts that identify me as a woman. The reason why my voice shakes today is because the personal comments that I have to make are terrifying to me about youth in our community. My godchild, who is transgender. A dear friend of mine who just came out on Facebook on Intersex Awareness Day, which I'm ashamed to say as a social worker I didn't even know was a day that we had. And I had no idea. I have known this person for almost 20 years. He's got the best beard I know. And I found out that he was born without any genitalia at all. And recently, the Trump administration said, we need to identify gender and sex based on the genitalia that a child is born with. He didn't have any. Thankfully, his parents and the compassionate physician that birthed him were able to take it nice and slow. And over the course of a couple days, did some genetic testing, and were able to make a decision that blessedly matches the internal compass that he has to identify as a man. And can you even imagine that over the course of being a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, having surgeries on your private parts in order to build a penis so that he could live his life as a male in our society? But what if he developed breasts too, with a beard? I found out because of this that he shared that intersex individuals are born at exactly the same rate as redheads. Now I know it's kind of hard to look around the world and know who's a natural redhead, because a lot of us like to dye our hair. But natural redheads occur at the exact same rate as intersex individuals. It is completely false to think that we can look at somebody and know what their truth is. And the idea that my godchild, who depending on which way they smile, looks a little more feminine, looks a little more masculine. If you caught him in a baseball cap from behind, looks like a boy. But when they put their lipstick on and paint their nails, they look like a girl. Who cares? This is a contributing, intelligent, amazing child. And we have nothing other than our good words and our smiles that actually protects them and gives them a message that they matter, even though they're confused. We have nothing that protects them, because without protections in place, we are tacitly saying it's okay to be dismissed. It's okay to be afraid. I can pull up the statistics and give them, but I just was reading that 65% of transgender individuals avoid going to the public restroom at all in public. Can you imagine? I can't. I have to go to the bathroom all the time. Thank you for 5 minutes. Thank you for your time. I absolutely support this.
Thank you.
the council wants to speak or has any question.
If anybody's an attorney, does anybody know why under Title VII, the Equal Employment Opportunity Law, they have not adopted these particular exclusions at the federal level?
I mean, I think it's a matter of political will. Under Title IX, there are actually several circuit court decisions, so no Supreme Court law, but circuit courts around the country have decided that sex discrimination would include discrimination based on sexual orientation or based on gender identity. But the 10th Circuit hasn't had a case either way, which is where we are. And recently, Kansas has joined a lawsuit, even though, again, not involved in our state, to say that it shouldn't include it. So the federal direction and Kansas's direction has been opposed to any federal protections.
I do have an answer for that. The EEOC actually interprets and enforces Title VII's prohibition of sex discrimination as forbidding any employment discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation. And I have a shirt now because my city councilman asked. It is responsible.
I'm sorry, could you come up?
Sure.
Up here, of course, please. Sorry, that's okay. Thank you.
So the EEOC is responsible for just trying to mediate and get a voluntary settlement for the accuser. But if the accused doesn't agree to that, then they do nothing. It's on the person who has accused them of discrimination regarding sexual orientation, gender identity, to then file a lawsuit. And then keep filing lawsuits until it goes up through the courts and hopefully get to another Supreme Court verdict. The EEOC can only submit a brief in support of their complaint. They can't actually enforce it.
Yeah, and there's actually an agency split on that point right now too, where the EEOC is in favor of that interpretation and the Justice Department has taken the opposite stance.
Thank you.
I just had a couple of comments that have sort of already been addressed, but with respect to privacy and safety, I think frequently women and children are invoked in the name of the bathroom non-issue being an issue. And I just wanted to say that as a woman, I completely view it as a non-issue, and I agree with the comments that have been made. This is coming from an unjustified place of fear. As our FAQ put together by staff, so helpfully directed on our website. Passing this ordinance does not take away any criminal prohibitions against voyeurism or assault or anything like that. So I think that it's a distraction and it doesn't really have any merit or basis in fact. There was actually recently a UCLA law study that looked at different jurisdictions in Massachusetts that had NDOs and didn't have NDOs, and they found no difference in rates of assault or other things happening in bathrooms. So it's just actually not a real issue. It's an issue that's raised from a place of fear. And then, so that was the main point I wanted to raise, and just also that I really appreciate everyone who has taken the time out of their schedule to come say what they think about this ordinance. And I know that for a lot of folks, it's a very vulnerable position to come up in front of a group and say your name and say where you're from. And so I really appreciate all the thoughtful feedback that we've gotten from our community on this issue.
I'd like to echo what Solly said and just thank everyone for their vulnerability in their perspective, whether I agree with it or not. I think it's a hard thing to get up and speak. But regarding the bathrooms, I have to say, I have a 3-year-old. I have zero concerns about taking her to Sylvester Powell and changing her anywhere in the locker room, in the stall. I have zero concerns about anything that she could potentially see. If anything, it only opened up a door for conversation that I think is obviously lacking in America for why we're having to even have this conversation right now. And beyond that, we don't have any, Dave and or Solly, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have any current bathroom legislation that exists in Kansas right now. So right now I can go use the men's room, and there's chief, can't do anything about it. So I'm not, so, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. But there's really no different mechanism here that would enable predators or whatever other labels we want to put on anyone to allow them greater freedoms for anything to be done in the bathroom. So I think that's an important note to make, and again, thanks everyone for coming out.
I also want to echo my thanks to all of you who have spoken on all sides of the issue. I think it's very important for you to be here and be able to voice your views to us. This is what deliberation's all about, and I really appreciate your input that you've given to us. The question that I have, I guess, for the council is, as we look at this as a legislative matter, Councilman Flores, in enforcement where there are agencies of the state that would adjudicate because they are covered classes, how would you view, would it be a bifurcated process that we would need to establish, where if it was a case that would be adjudicated at the state level, it would be referred to the state for that purpose?
Yeah, so my understanding of the drafting and my interpretation of the statute is if someone came, for example, with a race-based discrimination claim, they would be informed of those other avenues that they could take. Now, I don't think that our ordinance addresses if they said they didn't want to go through that and only wanted to do the city process, which obviously has a lot more limited remedies, that sort of thing, if they would be allowed to do so. My reading of the statute is that they would be. I don't know if that's a point we want to discuss, but...
About the ordinance?
Yeah,
oh,
of the proposed ordinance, yeah, is that, you know, they would still, it's included in the ordinance, so I think that they would be recommended to pursue the other avenues of relief that do have, you know, greater remedies and that sort of thing.
Can we ask David to talk a little bit about this in terms of your way in which it would be approached?
Our proposed ordinance says that we will advise people of their opportunity to go to the feds or go to the state, but it doesn't specifically preclude, as I read it, being able to go forth through the city procedure if that's what they choose to do for all the protected classes.
And there would be reasons for that, you know, too, I think, to, you know, tell them the option, because again, there's going to be a broader range of remedies and that sort of thing if you go to the other agencies. But it might be someone who really just wants, you know, the first stage of the ordinance is drafted is that attempt at conciliation. And so this might just be someone who wants an opportunity to sit down and have sort of a mediated discussion. It might just be someone who, you know, can't afford to hire an attorney and go through a full-blown, you know, federal discrimination complaint, and so is choosing to use the city process.
Do you know of anything else that's gone on, or anything that you've been involved in or heard of that's trying to get something going at the state level? You know?
I would
just personally, I'm pretty in favor of the spirit of this ordinance. I just do have some concerns about, you know, people talk about the teeth and the enforcement behind it, and to not have some protections at least the state level, I think is kind of concerning. And there's some legal gray area that I think it opens up without having that.
I mean, I would encourage everyone who shares that view, you know, to contact your legislators and, you know, make people have that voice in the state legislature and say, you know, we want to hear from you, you're our representatives, we don't care if you think it's a losing issue, we want to see you bring it up, but everyone who I've talked to in the State House thinks it's a losing issue with the composition. You know, that's what we heard from Representative Owsley, that's what we heard from Senator Bollier, that's what I've seen in other press circles.
Should that mean that people shouldn't try to take it on? I mean,
no, that's what I said. I would encourage you to push them to take it on.
Some of the way that this was brought up and some of the process behind it, the timing of it was just a little bit odd to me. And why that energy wasn't maybe put as much into trying to change this at the state level where it does have more teeth.
I think it's because people think that
Be enforced more
some of the
easily.
city bodies are more friendly and can get it done when the State House has shown no interest and no capability to do so. And along that point, I would just say, a really big concern here for me is that, the old adage, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So maybe, in your ideal world, you would really like to see federal protections and state protections, but I think we're a long way off from those, and I would encourage, advocacy on both those points, and I don't think anything in this prohibits that or prevents that. But I think, all of the talk of the enforcement mechanisms, like Mr. Harris mentioned, the procedure we've outlined is an HRC recommended procedure. It is mirrored. Similar provisions exist across the country with cities that have done this. And so, I think you can say, yeah, we really want to see this federal, or we want to see this state, but we as a city have an opportunity to act now, and the makeup of the state legislature and the makeup of Congress and the executive branch right now, you're probably not going to see anything.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Question or comment? So two things. I want to say for the last 16 years, it has been introduced in the State House to add protections for LGBTQ folks, and it's never received a hearing. But for 16 consecutive years, it has been introduced. It's just never had the political gumption to move forward. I can also say that here in Johnson County, we just elected not only the first, but the second. I'm not sure who won their election first, but two openly LGBT members to the State House. So I can assure you that it will be brought up again, and having somebody that has personally gone through this and personally been impacted may actually add to that, as they have personal stories that they can share with their colleagues and say, no, this is a real thing, we need to do this. If that doesn't occur, there's also methods of where the states can individually pass laws, and when enough states get together with those same laws, the feds then act on it. So the same thing can occur from a groundswell as cities, municipalities, counties, townships would pass that also. So it's does a tail wag the dog, or does a dog wag,
If I'm not mistaken, I think there's 20 states in the District of Columbia that currently have some similar laws and books. And I hope people don't give up the fight at the state level and are just trying to push things to the state level, because I still think that from an enforcement and
sir, I give you my word, I'm not going to stop fighting for this at the state level. But also in the way that our democracy is set up, we have the petri dishes that are the local governments. And if you guys pass this and you decide, no, when the state goes forward with this, we ought to adjust this or that, so I stand in full support of everything being done here today. And this is not in place or to allow the state to ignore this problem. This is to provide support and momentum as we move forward. And not to mention, here in CD3, we got our first openly LGBT member of Congress. So, I mean, this is a good direction to head, and I encourage council to move.
This actually is the way in which Smoke Creek, Kansas statute got implemented. It was done first in cities and then it moved to the state level. So that's a natural progression.
Well, as Debbie, sorry, as Debbie mentioned in our last discussion, she said this is something we should be advocating for at the league, and pushing potential if this is
Looking at
something
the broader
about.
interest of people at hand.
Right.
They shouldn't have to go from one city to another. It should be a broader range of why people are covered for the right reasons to me.
And I think this gives us some skin in the game, and especially if we see a ripple effect throughout Northeast Johnson County and Kansas.
It's obviously an issue that's very important to people. I'm assuming most of you didn't. Well, of course, a lot of you spoke. Most of you didn't come here to hear about the audit tonight. As interesting and riveting as that was. But I just think, again, there's some. Well, I just like to see the fight up at the state level as much as possible. I think it does. It puts a lot of pressure on the cities to deal, as you alluded to earlier, with some of the enforcement and making sure that what we pass is sensible and, I guess, is more than just a statement without having a state pass.
If I can respectfully add a couple comments to this discussion, and I say respectfully because I know this is maybe technically a public session, but here we are. I want to tie this conversation back to something you said, which is timing. So I'm sure a lot of people have thought this. So it is very much not a coincidence that in the space of maybe 3 or 4 months, this discussion has arrived in Mission and Prairie Village and weeks. Yeah, maybe short. Marion, probably Overland Park, probably. That is not a coincidence one bit. And the reason comes back to Topeka. So I would say the impetus for a lot of this is the Adoption Protection Bill. And as a gay man who's a resident of Kansas, that bill told me that the state legislature is, a majority of the state legislature, is not interested in protecting me. And that spurred me to action. And it spurred a lot of people to action. And I agree with what's been said multiple times. Unfortunately, there is zero prospect of this passing at the state level. So if you are a part of a community, or you are a strong ally of a community, and you want action to happen, well, here we are. This is where the action should happen. In the longer term, I think Representative Hadley talked about the Equality Kansas person in Topeka. I had a conversation with him, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and he said, yes, it's frustrating to have to do this at the local level, but every city that does it gives, kind of like you just said, gives your representative and your senator a reason to take it more seriously in Topeka. If no cities were working on this, and a representative could kind of rightly say, I'm not hearing about it, but if Senator Bollier, hears from 4 of her cities that they're working on it, she's got even more reason to attack it at the state level. So that's what I would add to the conversation.
In the interest of time, I guess we're in a situation where this is a discussion item. It's been a discussion item at a prior meeting. I get the sense, and I guess I'd like to verify if that's the sense of the group, then we're ready to move forward and have this actually become an action.
Over the next
For December, right?
Yeah, for December.
I second that.
Well, they're going to have to decide whether or not the draft ordinance that came from staff is what you want, or if there's something that needs to be tweaked. So,
Yeah, I think the only issue for me, and this was brought up in an email from someone, was we have ancestry as included in the actual prohibited actions, but we don't have it included in our statement of policy sort of opening clauses. So I would just say making that consistent and doing a final proof, and then I would view it as good to go.
I'd like to hear from those that haven't spoken.
I'm fine with moving it forward as an action item. I would like to make sure that our city staff and attorney don't have any other concerns about legal language or anything else that they want to review first.
Well, my understanding is this version has been reviewed by our legal counsel and by city staff. Or is that right? You can just nod your head.
I think that this has been a good discussion. I'm sorry that I wasn't here the last time. I watched the video and was very impressed by that discussion as well. And both of these, I think, have been very clear in terms of where I feel
I would like to say one thing. Regardless of what we do, what outcome comes of the ordinance, if somebody in this city feels like they're being discriminated against, whether it be employment, housing, whatever, I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody here but myself, I would like a call. I don't want to participate in a business that discriminates against people for any reason. And that's why I wasn't the utmost person for an ordinance, because I think this city can do things by seeing each other, looking each other eye to eye, shaking hands, and moving in that direction. I'll go ahead and I'll continue my research and figure out what I'm going to do one way or another. But in the interim, I don't want anybody discriminated against. And if we have, I'm not speaking for anybody, if I have any way to not participate with someone who discriminates against you for any reason, I personally would like to know about it. I really would. Because that's not what this city stands for. And I don't want it standing for that. And I think Kevin, as a business person and working with the various businesses, because he's supportive of this ordinance and this measure to move in a progressive manner to make this city non-discriminatory on any level, would probably be interested in knowing if you have been discriminated as well.
I do think that this legislation, this ordinance, will make a statement, will make that statement an official statement of this council.
And something we haven't really talked about that Kevin talked about possibly objecting about was just the economic impacts and potential economic impacts of this, especially with all of our developments coupling this. We're going to have a lot of, hopefully, millennials, young professionals moving into the city with all of our multi-unit housing that we have coming in. We want a welcoming, open community, and we want people that want to be in a welcome, open community. And this is the door to that.
Yeah. And I think what we're hearing from marginalized members of our community is that whether we might think so or not, it does send an important signal to the LGBT members of our community that they are welcomed and accepted, and that Mission wants to be an affirming and welcoming place.
Suzanne's story that they were, city shopping essentially, and we're considering Roeland Park front and center. Why? It's because they passed that in 2014. I think there's going to be a lot of, whether they're LGBTQ folks or if they're LGBTQ friendly, they're going to be looking and saying, wow, Mission is doing this. I want to be there.
Roeland Park, really?
Sorry, Joel.
I think it seems pretty clear that we're ready to try to take this as an action item for the next meeting, the next committee meeting. Right?
Do you prefer that we give feedback, any comments or anything in writing to Laura for inclusion into the ordinance? Or
It needs to be done fairly quickly.
And by what time frame?
Fairly quickly. I mean, we've spent 2 months looking at this, so those comments should be coming in.
The committee meeting will be the 12th of December, so the packet would go out, I have the calendar right here in front of me, the Thursday before.
I didn't see that letter for that. December 12th will be the committee meeting that is under discussion.
So really the week after Thanksgiving, if you can have any comments, that will be when we're kind of making any final changes or revisions to the week of the 29th or 26th of November.
Laura, will council meeting be the 19th?
The council meeting will be on the 19th.
I think with that, again, thanks for everyone for coming out and giving your comments. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is a discussion item on the Roeland Court Homes Association Subsidence and Creation of Community Improvement District. We're able to.
I do. I'm going to give it a shot. So if you can pass these around.
Can
I take us bathroom?
Yeah. Let's adjourn for 5 minutes and start back up at 8:40.
I didn't either. I'm the pregnant one, so yeah.
Just know. That was my
No, I appreciate it. No, I agree.
I love Larson, so that's so bad. And they're I find that really interesting, because they're changing, how two whiteboards are laid out, just so they can get better installation.
Oh, you can right now? Wow. I didn't know that. I just expected it. I know that's the standard.
Don't do that again. Yes. I'm not sure about it. Where's Papa was out there? I got to talk to him for a second. Thursday night.
That's tomorrow night.
I know. I know. It's the same people we're going to see Saturday.
Yeah.
We have to see them twice in 3 days.
They may feel the same way about you.
No.
So,
flashing.
I'm taking my mother.
I already have a day.
And I did that the first time because I didn't realize there was this. And I'm really like it.
I'm not gonna lie.
I thought it was great. She signed. I do. And I had Deborah.
Exactly.
Is it time for one of the drugs?
One of the drug bottles.
That's all I do. That's all I do.
Good for you.
I bet you did a lot more than that. All those numbers. Yeah, all those numbers are always right, aren't they? Tomorrow.
start back. So item number 6 on our agenda for tonight is the Roeland Court Homes Association Subsidence Creation Community Improvement District. It's a discussion item. Laura, if you want to
Yes,
take it away.
and more so than at any other point in my career, I really hope you read the packet. So I will try to kind of go through some of the bullet points. I do want to recognize that we've got 3 members of the Roeland Court Homes Association, or residents, and some members. I don't know, are you on the board? You're not on the board. Not anymore. Okay, 2 board members and a resident who are here with us, Barb Porto, Sheldon Buchel, and Vern Rourke. So I appreciate their time this evening, and they can certainly add to the conversation as we go through. But most of you are familiar that back in August of 2017, following a fairly significant rain event, there was a subsidence in the parking area at the rear of the Roeland Court Homes Association. And we have been working with our city engineers, property owners, the Homes Association, the board members, and an engineer that they had hired to kind of look at the causes of that situation. And more recently, we spent a significant amount of time, as we both needed to, I think, to look at causes, and included our engineer's report. Ultimately, we got to this spring and realized we were probably going to have a fundamental difference of opinion about what caused the subsidence. So we really turned our attention to what benefits all of us, and I think that was working towards a solution. One of the things that wasn't included, I realized as I went back to the memo, is that, and some of you may have heard this, there was also a significant amount of wastewater work. When the subsidence happened, there was a sanitary line that was compromised. And Johnson County Wastewater was out for several months repairing and replacing that line, and spent upwards of $300,000 making that repair. One of the things that, and they had been at the table through those conversations, wastewater as the utility would have the ability to assess the cost of those repairs back against the Homes Association. And that was obviously a serious concern for the Homes Association and for the city. As we continue to look at solutions, one of the things that Johnson County Wastewater committed to was if we were able as a city and Homes Association to find a solution that they would absorb those costs for that repair and not look to assess those back against the Homes Association and the city. So we felt like that was a really significant sort of step forward. We then really started looking at, I think, I'm going to skip ahead to, I think we're all familiar with the fact that there is a stormwater project that has been planned for some time that affects that creek channel. We have a handout, but it indicates the preferred solution that was selected by the City Council and is currently included in the city's capital improvement plan. And essentially what that involves is a hardening of the creek channel from Roeland Drive. This is the former Mission Bowl property. Townhomes are here, so Roeland Drive. This is a parking lot, which has currently also been compromised and experiencing significant erosion. But these yellow lines represent a hardening of the channel, or a fortification of the channel to limit the erosion and eliminate the erosion, both through sort of block walls and then a concrete wall through this section where the elevations are much more significant. So essentially a channel protection project. That design and construction is all in at about $4.8 million. And I gave you the sheet. This is straight out of our capital improvement plan. It was included in the 2019 budget. We are on the list for SMAC funding for that project. We are at the bottom of the list for SMAC project. Literally, we are the last project on the list of approved projects. When we went into the 2019 funding cycle, there were approximately $44 million worth of projects on that list. SMAC funding is available to the tune of about $12 to $13 million annually, so that gives you a sense of how long it might take us to rise to the top of that SMAC funding list. So when we found out that that's kind of what our situation was in 2019, one of the other things was really for the benefit of the Homes Association. They've made some temporary repairs that allows the residents to access the garages, which are at the rear of the townhomes, but it's certainly not a permanent solution or an ideal solution. But we also didn't want to think about how we might pursue a solution without the city participating and providing some strengthening and some fortification of the creek channel, at least as it related to that section of Rock Creek. So if you'll flip to the other handout that I gave you. So we've been working with George Butler and Associates, who were one of the city's on-call engineering firms, who submitted the preliminary engineering study and is most familiar with the larger SMAC project, to look at some design alternatives for that section of the creek. And so what we provided is a handout which kind of shows, and it's a little bit hard to follow, but essentially you would be looking at a project whereby we would fortify just the south side of that channel, would abut against the parking area, common area for the townhomes. That would leave the north side of the channel unprotected at this point. And you've got it's labeled as Exhibit C, that kind of shows you a cost estimate. So George Butler went through and prepared some cost estimates. It looks like a spreadsheet for us that we worked through, looking at if we were to pursue a project to make the improvements in that area to allow the Homes Association to be able to restore their property. What would the costs be and how would we allocate those costs proportionately between the city and the Homes Association? And so that's what you see here is really an itemization of the concept design all the way through design and engineering. And with the cost share of the city's portion of that being about 66%, and the Homes Association share being about 34%. So really all-in design and construction for this portion, talking about a $963 million project. So $1 million to take $963,000. Sorry,
Zeros, it's fine.
Zeros and zeros, right? So still very significant in terms of dollar investment. $620,000 of that would be the city's share, and $343,000 that would be attributed to the Homes Association. One of the things that we explored early on were what resources, financial resources, might be available to the Homes Association to make the repairs. We looked at FEMA resources, we looked at other county resources, and I tried to turn over every stone we possibly could, and really didn't come up with much. As we really started then talking about and thinking about how would we move forward with a solution, it didn't fit the mold of a typical public special benefit district, because the improvement on the private property was obviously that improvement on the private property. So as we started talking with our land use attorneys and bond councils, they said, well, we could consider the use of a community improvement district. So we often think of community improvement districts and their sales tax component. We've implemented several of those throughout the community on our development projects. The Community Improvement District Act also provides for a special assessment component, which would allow essentially the creation of a benefit district for a project on private property. And so what that would require, as you may recall with the other development projects, is a petition would have to be submitted whereby 55% of the square footage in terms of land area within a proposed district and 55% of the assessed valuation, those percentages would need to be met in terms of number of signatories in order for you to consider a petition and have that move forward. So this was kind of a solution that we've been meeting with and talking with the Homes Association really late the summer through the fall. We had a meeting, I believe, in late August, where we presented that, and have worked to draft a CID petition so residents might understand what that would look like. If you take the costs of the project attributable to the Homes Associations of $343,000, and if you spread that equally over the 20 units that are there, and spread it over a 22-year period, which is how long the CID could go, you're looking at about a $781 a year assessment that would be added to the taxes. So again, still a significant dollar amount, but certainly something that's more manageable than if they tried to undertake that entirely as a homes association and tried to do that in one fell swoop. So we have been working for the last probably 6 weeks on answering questions and looking at securing the signatures for the CID petition. And as of the 1st of November, and thanks to the help of the board and Sheldon and others, we have kind of reached and surpassed those thresholds. So we currently have 16 signatures from 16 of the 20 properties who would be interested in pursuing. So we've met those thresholds. So it represents actually almost 95% of the land area and 79.9% of the assessed valuation. The difference there is that the Homes Association actually owns the paved area as common area, but the county has assigned no assessed value to it. So we had to factor it in terms of square footage, but we had to exclude it in terms of calculation for assessed value. So they've accomplished and achieved both of those percentages and would be ready to potentially submit that petition for consideration by the City Council. I think that we feel like from a staff perspective that this is a project that makes sense. We would like to bring this forward and ask the council to consider the creation of the Community Improvement District and moving forward with this project. A couple of things. What that would look like, you may recall that the first step would be excuse me, the submission of the petition, and then the council would consider a resolution that would call a public hearing. And so then we would call the public hearing, and then the conclusion of the public hearing, the council could take action on the CID petition at that point, or if you needed additional information, that could move forward. We would anticipate that the Homes Association would submit their petition, and that we would put on the December agenda a resolution calling a public hearing for January. That would also give us an opportunity. We're currently reviewing the larger contract for design of this entire SMAC project. That was something that's moving forward from GBA, but that would give us the opportunity to look at that design contract. That design contract in total is about $620,000. So that's that entire length of the project from Roeland Drive down past the Mission Hill property. So we would look at bringing that contract forward in December as well. And then looking at potential financing options. So what I think as we look at some of the concerns as we've talked with the engineers and the Homes Association, if we're going to make $1 million investment in that creek, how long is it prudent for us to wait before we do the entire creek section? Are we creating, are we jeopardizing some of those kinds of things? And so the other thing that I'd like to do at the December meeting is look at some scenarios whereby we might look at moving that project up in its entirety. I think we would have the ability to do that and potentially flip that with another SMAC project further down the road. And if it makes financial sense to do that, I think in terms of the long-term investment in our stormwater infrastructure, that probably makes sense because there's as much concern on the north side of the channel for the erosion that's occurring on the parking lot that serves the empty management building. That's not going to get any better anytime soon, and I know they have also approached us recently about looking at making some improvements to that section. So yes.
Do we lose our SMAC place in line if we switch the nature of the project?
We potentially could, but we wouldn't. The one that I think we would be replacing it with would be the Johnson Drive. So that our next look at the project, another SMAC project, would be the next phase of Johnson Drive. So I think timing-wise, you know, again, I think that's a conversation that I can come back to you with a real number. So Ellers and Bruce Kumla are running some scenarios, so we can really look at that and understand the implications and what the trade-offs might be, and we can make that decision there. But I think it is worthy of a conversation to have that in December as we look at this in total.
Can I ask just a brief question?
Yes.
Please, I can relate to this, that if you own a townhome and you pay X amount per month over the 22-year period and you move and you sell it, does an HOA then decide if that person makes up from that point on? Or how is the...
Stays with the property. So
Just
the new
stays with
owner,
the property.
yeah, so the new owner of the property would just assume that.
Okay.
So, any other questions? Did I miss anything? Did I miss it? No? Yes? No?
No, I think you've covered, all the high points. Yeah, it's been fun on the floor for the last over a year now, and as she mentioned, we've turned over many, many, many rocks, and we've all done our research on the history of the creek, and you guys saw in some previous exhibits where it used to be and where it was straightened, and how it's been moved and shifted over many years. I think that this is something that, without taking action soon, that it's going to continue to meander on its own, and we'll see additional challenges with that area.
Can you just give me just a brief, no detail, just a brief statement as to how we came up with at what point the city pays 50, they pay 50, sometimes the city pays 100, sometimes they pay 100. What's the basis of that?
So let's just pick an item. So if we look at, so 100%, so if you go down about where it starts with 4-inch under drain, granular backfill, so those items that are 100% the city are those items specifically related to construction. Will we flip back to our version, please? Construction of this wall, so this red line, so the wall, so anything related to the wall, which is actually in the creek channel. And then if you look at the things that were allocated 100% to the Homes Association, for example, that's going to be concrete flume, the asphalt base, that's their parking area. Okay, so, and landscape, so reset landscaping blocks, 6-foot wood fences, those kinds of things, all of those things up on top of that wall and back onto that private property.
Conceptually, the construction cost that is the city's portion of 452 plus the design, so the total was 620,000. That would be a cost that we would have incurred anyway with regards to this, correct?
So that, yes, our $620,000 is a subset of the $4.8 million in the larger SMAC project.
Right. So we're just advancing that
Correct.
component.
Correct.
That's what we have.
Yeah, and if I may.
Yes.
I think,
Why don't you come up and
yeah, by all means.
formally. I won't breathe on you.
No, you're good. Sheldon Butchell, I'm the owner and the Roeland Home Association president. So yeah, I think that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. With the SMAC project and really advancing that forward, I think that based upon the engineer that we've hired and George Butler and some other experts, they've effectively determined that the risk area, as you guys see with the wall being built in the red line, is really the high priority area. I will personally say that the research I've done and some others on the board have found that this has been a concern since 1999, again in 2008, and part of a few larger studies. But the likelihood of there being unstable grounds in the short term, as in immediate needs when it rains and gets crazy, is definitely outlined there, and that would allow us to restore our property to full usability and get out of the nightmare that our residents are in. But that said, nobody expected this to happen as well. And then that 5.5-inch rain event in one night was when this occurred. And so who knows when the next one of those is going to happen.
How is the petition coming along in terms of the signatures? I know you've worked on that. Has the HOA come together and determined the
Yes.
majority?
We currently have 16. Did Linda turn hers in today? No. So we have one more. For sure. That she lost her petition and she's trying to find it. And I sent her another soft copy today. And so we've got 17 most likely. We've got one that we were never expecting to be returned. We've got some owners and residents that have recently moved to Onega into a care facility, and we're not expecting them. So in my head, I'm doing 17 and 19. That's pretty good. In terms of the land area for the common area, we actually took it to a written vote and passed that within our homes association as well. So that's how we did the backup for the support for the common area. So I've got all those forms back to you.
So the moving up of the city project will then, on the lower part of the creek, will protect the investment that the residents are going to be making on the upper bank.
Correct. Okay. With regards to the rest of the channel, the area where the parking lot is affected, is that part of the property? In other words, will there be also a shared cost in that section?
We have talked with them about a shared cost. They have expressed an interest in participating in a similar fashion. So that's part of why we're looking at those larger costs, because they have been talking to GBA on their own, actually, and looking at doing a project, because that portion is not, they're not an easement. So what we don't want to have happen is for them to come in with a different set of plans and build something that protects that we might be ripping out in the future, right. If we can. But I also don't think it makes sense to, build a wall here, build a wall here, and then leave the other sections open and try to figure out how to connect to those in the future. So I think that's really what prompted us to start looking at, can we manage and should we manage that larger project?
Well, I think there's probably some cost savings to do all that at once, right?
Absolutely.
Portions of it, and then come back and redo other portions. Probably much more expensive in the long run, I imagine.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some economies of scale if you can do
Some figures on that, I think, would be really great to see.
It might also speed up the development of that area as well.
Right. The other thing is, I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen long-term with the Mission Bowl property. We know Mission Bowl is not reopening. What I've heard is the intent would be to demolish that. But, the other thing to think about is that now might be the best time to get in to do the creek, because it's going to require significant equipment. And so that there may be an opportunity there. I mean, particularly there adjacent where those grades are so steep. There'll be some challenges in getting those walls constructed, so that may be another factor to think about, that we aren't competing with some potential development project in the future. So with that, our plan would be to bring back, again, the resolution to call a public hearing on the CID petition, the GBA contract for design, which we need to move forward with anyway, and then the financing options and alternatives, so we can make some of those decisions.
I think it's a good first step here. Anything that we can show people too, the cost savings of tackling it all at once versus trying to piece it all together. I think there's probably some big savings that we recognize in the long run.
And Laura, since you mentioned Mission Bowl, we did get questions about status at our board meeting last night. So if it would be possible to get an update to the extent there is one for December, that would be. We said that we keep checking the docket, and there's been no information. But if anything changes before our next meeting,
I will ask
that would be
again before the next meeting.
Thanks.
Just wanted to say thank you to the HOA for all the work that you've done.
Absolutely.
I know that this has not been a very pleasant process for you.
It's a learning experience.
But we're glad you hung in there and we've been able to reach a reasonable solution for all involved. So thank you.
We're going to talk about the square footage.
The square footage, I think that it was mentioned the 20 level. Correct?
Yes, so we went back and we are able to, CID Act allows us to assess it either on a square footage basis or equally across all the properties. And so I think that's generally how we had presented it initially. And so we've gone back and revised the petition, so it's their level contributions for all 20 townhomes.
You said equal or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great.
All right. All right, next up on our committee meeting tonight, we have a quarterly police department update. Hadley. No, he's just been hiding out behind you.
That'll hide very easy. So I know we're after 9 o'clock, so I won't take up too much time. I will tell you that real quick on behalf of the employees, I very much appreciate what you guys have done with the benefits and everything. And I'll admit, I was part of the reason why the health insurance went up. Glad to see that maybe perhaps I'm part of the reason why it's staying flat now. So anyways, on to the quarterly report. This is usually about 6 to 8 months or weeks behind by the time that we get all the stats and everything accounted for and get the reports out. So obviously some of the stuff has changed over the last few weeks. I'm not going to dive into the numbers too much other than Laura and I did have a discussion about some of the citations, traffic stops, DUIs, drug arrests and everything. On the very last page, I talked about why some of that stuff happens. Had a person who left, have a person over in Afghanistan, training 5 people in the 3rd quarter during field training. Also had 2 people that were hurt and promotions. It's a lot to do in a 3-month period. Our main focus is answering the calls for service in your districts and your wards. That's number 1. When you call 911, you expect that somebody's going to show up. Our secondary stuff that we do is all the community events that we do. Our traffic unit, our people that ride the motorcycles and that kind of stuff. I promoted the person that does most of our DUIs on midnights to the rank of corporal, and that falls into our first category of calls for service on the streets. We always have the supervisor on duty. The second person that was in traffic wrecked the motorcycle, and 60% failure rate, and the wheel school is a very hard school. She is still on light duty. So when you start factoring a lot of that stuff in, it takes people off the street. I've been using our 1 traffic person that works during the daytime that rides the motorcycle to cover a district. We also have to train over 40 hours a year in all these different categories. City offices were closed on Monday. We were out training because that was the only day that we could go out and use some of the stuff at the police academy. The shoot machine that some of you guys have tried, and the driving machine that just got a brand new driving machine that you guys will have to go out and try. Anyways, that's why some of the numbers, when you look at them on the quarterly report for some of our self-initiated stuff, is lower. I don't expect our brand new officers to go out and get DUIs every single day, stop 10 cars I want to drive in your districts. And it's scary when you first get out in the car by yourself. You got a gun and a badge and you're getting sent on these calls and you don't have somebody sitting next to you telling you what to do anymore. And I want these officers to become well-rounded and confident in what they're doing and not so much about going out and stopping so many cars. I will tell you that we checked with Prairie Village last week, and our stats where they are for the 3rd quarter is exactly where Prairie Village is right now. And they're fully staffed and they have 10 more officers. So as much as I look at the stats and everything and I want to know, why are we not getting as many DUIs and stuff, those are the reasons why.
we're in a good spot downstairs. I have a person who's getting ready to retire in December, one of our investigators. I've got a person that used to work at Olathe that we're looking at hiring, and another person to send to the academy. So your police department's sitting in a good spot as far as our staffing goes. I just got to get some people back up and running and off of workers' comp, and that'll come with time. But all of our brand new people that went through the academy and everything are on their own, and they're doing a good job. So they're right where we need them to be. So, but,
Geographically, Chief, how much are you tapped to go to Wyandotte County?
I'm sorry?
Geographically, because we're so closely related to Wyandotte County, how often are you called to assist them?
Over into Wyandotte County, it's not as frequent. I will tell you that we end up in Roeland Park and Oakland Park more than anywhere else. So
You have to weigh a factor if those as stats too, right?
Yeah. So when you get your next quarterly report, which will be the end of the year, you will see the actual number of how many times we've gone to assist other agencies.
Okay.
Now, other departments come over to assist us. There's times that we call it being blacked out where somebody calls for help and I've got nobody to send, which means Roeland Park and Oakland Park, when we help them, they come and help us. So, yeah. Any other questions?
I know this has been a need that we've identified before regarding the mental health co-responders and just the availability on hand. But so of the 36 times we notified the Johnson County mental health responder, there were 2 responses. Is that what that means? So that's concerning. And
not a good number.
Right. And so I guess the question to Chief and Laura, what can we do to advocate to the Johnson County Commission to hire another mental health responder, or what can we do as a city?
We're paying for it.
Right.
The city.
So and that was the next point I'm going to. So our mental health co-responder is going to a different position come January in mental health, and will not be our co-responder. What we have found, nobody's ever had 7 agencies together like this. Most of their time is spent in Prairie Village and Leawood. And what the 7 cities have been talking about recently is that Prairie Village and Leawood would get their own co-responder, and that the other 5 cities, Roeland Park, Westwood, Fairway, and Merriam and us, would have our own. Now that means that our fee would go up. We are trying to work with Schlossmacher Medical Center on a grant to where they would cover a certain percentage, which means that they would be able to spend more time in mission. So, yes.
Do we have a sense of why they're spending most of their time in Prairie Village and Leawood instead of the rest of the cities?
Bigger city.
Okay, so just a pure population basis.
Right. And right now there's an office that she operates out of in Leawood, and they have an office up in Merriam. They're up in Merriam about 1 to 2 days a week, and out in Leawood the rest.
Okay.
The other issue is that she has a police radio, but there are 3 dispatches, and you can't monitor all of them. So when we call for help from the co-responder, they're busy.
Gotcha.
So it's easier, Shawnee and Lenexa split one, and now they're both going to have their own because those are larger cities, and they found that they're just not getting the same response. So we're hopeful that we will have Schlossmacher Medical Center on board. We should know that in another week or 2, and Laura and I are going to have that discussion.
But there's a real possibility that we may be without a mental health correspondent for a period of time because of the one who's currently serving is maybe transitioning to that other position. And so I had a conversation at a Johnson County Manager's Luncheon last week about the county's ability to hire and retain folks who want to serve in those positions. So we may go for, it's certainly something that's on our radar, and we're trying to make those numbers look better, but they may get worse before they get better, just from a staffing perspective.
Does this 36 include perhaps some things to happen on a Sunday at 5 p.m. when that person is not available? Does that include what would be a call, that 36, or is it, no, they're not available, so we're not going to reach out to them anyway?
So we reach out every time.
Okay.
So if it's a time that they're off, and I will tell you that they don't work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, usually they're on during the evening time, so they're working right now. If they're not available, or if it's after hours, we call the hotline. twice this quarter.
So
Which I would tell you.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, and it's to me, it's not so much getting the help on the front end, it's the back end, and that's what sold me on it through the other cities that have done this, Olathe and Overland Park. If we get a call to somebody's house, and whether they can respond or not, it's the follow-up the next day and 2 days later, and I would love for my officers to be able to go out and do that. We're not getting that follow-up on the back end, which means we're still doing all the work on the front end and there's no follow-up on the back end, which doesn't make me want to spend that money. But I think the program is valid. I think that we just need to get a co-responder with less cities involved to where they're up in Merriam all the time, housed, and we're going to get a lot more work for our money in the end.
I was just going to say, is there anything in the meantime that we could be doing to better equip our own officers with training? And I know you guys do certifications already, but is there anything else that would be helpful in that end?
Every one of our officers gets CIT training.
Okay.
It's a week long. So, and I get emails a lot about how professional the officers are and helping out with those types of calls. So,
on the first page of your report, the burglary to auto seems really almost double
right.
From last year. Is that still,
That-
is that consistent through the year, the same, that you're experiencing that?
So again, it's 6 to 8 weeks behind because this ended the end of September. We haven't had near as many over the last several weeks. I know that these people either get caught or they go to another city.
Okay.
And a lot of times it can be a gang, it can just be teenagers, it could be a group that has run their time here and they go to Oklahoma City or they go to Lincoln, Nebraska, and they just keep moving. We have not had near as many recently, and again, if I could get people to lock their car, that would help, because they will get in your car over a $3 pair of sunglasses. But that's most of the vehicles that we had that were broken into. It's not broken glass. So, and I have video of the people driving by, going down the wrong side of the street, and they're just reaching out and they're just lifting up, and if the door starts to open, they pull over, get out, get in your car, 30 seconds later they're gone. So it's locking your cars. We're doing a good job of, again, don't leave stuff in your car. We're doing good with that, but you just gotta lock your car. So.
Thank you for your report.
Yeah, good job.
Yep.
We voted on going to see.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Pardon, City Attorney.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you. The last thing on this agenda tonight are any department updates, Laura?
I'm just going to run through a few things quickly because you won't want to listen to me at the end of the next meeting. Just a reminder that we moved our council meeting. Is not next week, it's the 28th of November at 7 p.m. You may have seen lights are going up Long Johnson Drive, so holiday season is here, rapidly approaching. We'll have holiday lights on festive sites. And that first Friday in December, which I think is the 7th, sorry. Thanks for Seniors event is tomorrow. I know most, if not all of you, are planning to attend that. The uplift truck will also be in the parking lot at the community center, so if you have items you want to bring to donate, please do so. Also, Thanksgiving basket assembly will be next Monday morning, starting at 8 at the community center if you're interested in helping with that. And I'll be missing Thanks for Seniors tomorrow because Brent Morton and I will be going to Pittsburgh to receive the award for the Fox Ridge Project. So bring that back. That was the GBA submitted that for us, so excited to do that. That's all I have.
Nice signs.
Okay.
I like the signs.
Oh, the signs, the new signs, the new old. Thank you.
All right, well, then I think we can adjourn our...
Now Kristen can make up the time.
Sorry, Rick, behind there, but...
I would like to call the order of the CDC meeting at, I don't know, 9:23.
It's normally the other way around. Give us once in a while.
Oh, now we get fun things, the market.
Yay! Let's talk about the market! So we wanted to do, I can do a quick recap. We had good feedback
both anecdotally through the public survey that we put out, which we do every year, and a vendor survey electronically. We had a vendor sort of debrief meeting that was a suggestion of the vendors actually at our sort of thank you soiree we had at the end of the season. There were only 5 vendors who attended, but it was still a great discussion. It felt like a really free, flowing kind of brainstorming session about what worked, what we could do better. I have a few stats we do each year to show. And so all of you were there. You understand the trials we had this year related specifically to weather. Obviously, the big change this year was that we switched from Saturday to Thursday. We still had a 4-month market through the end of September, which was a shortened season from previous. We stuck, the plan had been 4:30 to 8 p.m. We were incorporating the third Thursday, kind of bigger party atmosphere, kind of evenings once a month. Feedback on that, I would say, I think some people still feel a loss from what they knew at the Saturday market. That came through in the survey. I think we still had a lot of overwhelming support for the ambiance of the market. I had a good time at the market. The feeling is great. I love the food trucks. I love the band. So I think the atmosphere we're providing is well received. We just need to get more people there, and we need to have fewer thunderstorms. So you see, yeah, right. What can we do? The average attendance, I did include the third Thursdays, which I think are fair. That's a Thursday at the market. So even though those spikes really shoot up, it's still one of our Thursdays in the course of the season. So I included that in our average. You had the sheet here that was included in the packet that kind of walked through the market, and we included the weather, so you can see thunderstorms, 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 rain for 5 weeks in a row. We had our special events there that we were enthusiastic about and want to build on. The first half of the season, the first 2 months, we were feeling really, really bullish about it. We had, average attendance was up. We felt like the pivot to Thursdays was the right decision, something to build on still. It takes a long time to sort of shift people's habits and awareness to kind of build that new habit or talk to those new, potential visitors. But I think we were feeling so strong, and then just got pummeled. So, to feel fair about it, I think we did just really want another crack at it. With we always expected the heat, but it was really kind of a double whammy. So the next slide, just quickly to say vendor count. There was a dip, and you can see that probably better on this graph as well. But we had a low period in August, and I think, kind of some fatigue there. Low numbers, and, people are protective of their items in the rain. So our average for vendor count, is about on par with past years. I think it would have been higher with different kinds of weather events. We did have a shorter season. Last year we kind of went gangbusters and tried the through the end of October. We had a shorter season this time. I think there's fatigue just in general on behalf of the vendors, for how long we stick with it, how many times do I, go to the trouble of coming out, and so I think that might have played into it. I want to say too, the quality of the vendors we had this year and the participation and the kind of, commitment of them was just exceptional. We had just a great group. And some really unique items that I would stand behind at any market in the region, and I just wanted to publicly thank them. We're in this together. We try to be really supportive to our vendor community, and we really want them to do well, and we don't take it for granted that they're standing out there in all elements and doing what they do, which is incredible. Really, some extremely talented people have joined us year over year. So I do want to point out kind of the trend line that is, downward facing, and I think that gets to kind of the fatigue aspect of it. You start strong, and then it just gets harder, or you're distracted, or you move on to other things, or, and that's in attendance as well. For a public survey, just to share with you the general feeling, we had 136 people respond. We ask them why they come. Do you come for the music? Do you come to hang out? Do you come to meet neighbors? Do you come to buy things? Still overwhelmingly the reason, even with the third Thursdays and that sort of happy hour ambiance, I come because I want to buy something either to take home with me or to eat there. So we did include the food trucks in that response, but still it's not like I just come down to like sit on a blanket and listen to the music. Like, so people are really still talking about what is available for sale. Other obligations, far and away, still the main competitor. No surprise. There's always competition for your time. Still really strong in Mission residents. Are you a Mission resident? Yes or no? 70% are yes. The next largest out of the 136, I think, was maybe 17 from Roeland Park. So still, I think, one of our most very promising targets of promotion to our neighbors. Food trucks, atmosphere, you know, in the comments, what is most beneficial, you know, just that whole, love the party vibe, love meeting my neighbors, love, you know, that kind of thing. You see that consistently through. How likely to recommend to a friend? This did go down. Each of the previous 3 years we had in the 7s, like weighted average out of 10, 7, and this was 6.6, so a bit disappointed to see that. But overall, I think the survey echoed what we thought. I want to just sort of say, where did we succeed? We did have a lot of praise in the survey for staff, for the vendors. We've held true to that friendly and collaborative market. We want to be welcoming, we want to have a low barrier of entry, we want to, you know, take all comers, have room for volunteers, for, you know, up-and-coming musicians, for businesses or nonprofits to have booths or have a presence at the market and participate with us however they can. And I think we've accomplished that and maintained that over the years. And I still think the sense of pride, I still think if you came to the market, you probably had a nice time and you were probably proud that Mission had one, and I think that's really important. And then the activity, we saw, you know, we've had even more new businesses come since we started this, and the play off of them, you know, having the large-scale Jenga from Mission Board Games at the market and sort of, you know, playing around in Brian's Bakery, staying open on Thursday evenings. There's more of that experimentation going than we hoped for, where you're open, we're open, we can play off of that, how can we collaborate? You know, we had Oregano and Time be there. They were thinking for promotion reasons. They ended up doing well financially as well at the market. Can't say enough about it. They're looking forward to 2019. So sort of those kinds of collaborations are really exciting. What we would propose, you know, we had Kate and Carrie Dickerson and Kate Beacon, our two market coordinators who share the primary work of the market each week. I checked in with them, you know, they had some hard times. It's hard to stand out there, it's hard to deal with slow markets, it's hard to catch tents as they're blowing down the street. So checking in with them and saying, what is your feeling? And just getting really positive response back. They want another crack at it. I mean, they want to go back out, we want to try new things, they still have new ideas, they still have lots of enthusiasm for it. I feel the same. I think, as always, we're seeking more and new and different vendors and those who do great things and want to stay with us through the season. We do have more of a name for ourselves. Our phone rings more than we call out, or not more, but probably, you know, it didn't ever used to happen. Now people call us, so that is great. What I would propose is a tighter season for June, July, and August. It's really a tough dilemma because you have September with the more likely beautiful weather and the harvest. But we just keep beating into that. How long can we keep this going at levels that feel profitable and worthwhile for everyone's time? And the school season, you know, the school begins at the beginning of August. I mean, not even at the end of August. And so you have parents running and distracted, and I think you have that strong, can't wait to get outside feeling and vibe at the beginning. And so that would be a 12-week season, down from our 17 that we had this time, taking the week off for the 4th of July. I would still propose sticking with the third Thursday concept and playing off of that. We've had initial conversations. I mean, we heard that when we were proposing the Thursday evening thing, that alcohol is a draw, and that party happy hour vibe. If you're going to get together with friends after work, where are you going to go? We want to be that alternative for people. So we've already had initial conversations with two of our previous alcohol beer garden hosts the Hy-Vee Market Grill and Salsa Grill, talking to them about, if you do a third Thursday, would you also commit to doing a couple of our regular markets, knowing that the attendance level would be considerably less? How can we make that more streamlined for you? How can we take sort of the labor burden out of it for you? You know, just talking about what ways it would make it easier for them to come down and participate, knowing that it wasn't going to be hand over fist busy like it is on the Thursdays. And we've gotten really warm response from them so far. So what I'm hoping is you take 12-week season and you build those in, you can start to have a greater portion of your nights with an alcoholic beverage available. We have to have that same conversation with food trucks, and to be really honest with you, that's a difficult nut to crack. They have higher expenses, they have labor costs, they have things like that. It's tough for them to come out and do a very slow, modest business, and we don't want to have them come out and leave disappointed because we need them to be there for our third Thursday food truck nights. Yes.
I was just going to say, one thought on that might be seeing if the two new breweries, assuming that they're up and running, could work on convincing some food truck partners, you know, who want to have an ongoing relationship with them.
Yes, that'd be great.
For their regular business.
With the brewery that's going to be right across the street, if there's any way to allow, I know there's rules on selling beer and stuff, but
we have a sit-down meeting.
Essentially buy a beer there and go take it across the street, or I don't know. If there's some way to work something out for Thursday nights during the hours of the market, I don't know.
Well, we're open to all, I mean, you know, within the law, we will be doing what we can. We do have a sit-down meeting with Sandhill because that's a game changer. Having a, you know, I mean, it's same block across the street within view. So as soon as they kind of settle down from their Hutchison opening, we're going to sit down and talk. And
maybe we can just allow red Solo cups on that block between the hours of 4 to 9 on Thursday.
That's all how you draw the map on the permit, right?
Here comes the fun police. What do you got?
It vanished.
Well, I can keep going.
I had a question about the September. Are you still planning the third?
Yes, that's what we were thinking. Yeah, so we could just have kind of a wrap-up party. Theoretically, it's beautiful weather. You know, we have the Sunflower Festival in August. We have, you know, and so we can kind of keep the party rolling a little bit, not do a market every single week. Is what we were kind of thinking. And then we also, you know, this was a goal of last year, and I just don't think we executed it to the satisfaction of what we were thinking, but we kind of have our ground game organized a little better. But really sitting down now in the off-season with our employers in town and asking a series of questions, including, you know, how do we reach your employees? How do we get in front of them? How do we talk to them? How do we train them to come down? How do we let them know for sure that they're there? And not just submitting something for their newsletter to maybe you forward on or not, but really start getting in front of them with the enthusiasm we feel for the market and trying to meet them where they are in terms of, you know, come on down and sort of really build that up. And same with churches and homes associations and Roeland Park groups in general. Those are just untapped folks, and you really, you know, we just haven't done all that I know we can do in terms of reaching out to them. We've got a couple of coordinators, we have a lot of boosters and supporters of the market who are interested in helping us with that, so that's good. So those are the two kind of, I think we need more people, and I think a tighter format, and we can start filling it in. We already talked to, you know, Samantha, who does the pop-up yoga, and she already wants dates on the calendar, and so we kind of just start building it, and all of it feels more manageable if you're just talking about 12 weeks, and you can kind of really just hit those hard, so that is our, I like it.
Great job. Any questions for Emily? All right, next item we have is City Hall exterior lighting.
And I'll take that one actually.
All right, thank you.
So you'll notice, as we mentioned, the new signage out front, which was one part of it. The new steps out front, that's another part of it. It's dark out there. That's the part we're talking to you tonight. So Brent pulled together these 3 bids for outdoor lighting. We had a long time, you know, difficulties with them. Also, you know, the floodlights that shine on the building or on the signage, you know, we're laying pitifully in the grass, having been hit numerous times, I'm sure, by lawnmowers and things. When the stormwater failure happened last year, more damage was done to the underground cable, so fewer things worked out front. So this really is a package that would light properly and with new LED fixtures the building, the signage, the steps, the stairs, the sidewalks, the flag, and other things. So that was up for your approval.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It says available budget 0. Can you tell me why?
Yes. So we budget $25,000 a year in this line item for maintenance and repairs at City Hall. And this year, in addition to biting the bullet, and it was a council priority to get those steps and I think the pavers replaced. So that was about a $16,000 project that we really hadn't anticipated when we put the budget together for this year. And then we had, between the AC failure on this side of the building and an unanticipated roof repair, we had about another $16,000. And so we just had things we had to deal with this, but we feel like with the investment, we've been saving money and adding to that fund balance, and this we felt like was a priority worth bringing to you this year because there are budget savings available overall to accomplish this. But in that specific line item, we've exceeded the budget.
So it just comes out of general fund?
Yeah, it would just come out of fund balance.
All right. Take it to council, consent, non-consent?
Consent.
Okay, great. All right, next item. Selection on-call engineering firms.
Yes, we, our current existing on-call engineering contract was up for renewal. We put out an RFQ and heard back from 5 firms. We interviewed all of those firms with a panel of 8 staff, elected officials, a representative of our planning commission and the Johnson County Urban Services Division. Heard interviews, presentations from each of those firms, and then did a scoring matrix on the criteria that are listed on the handout that we put out tonight for you. Those are the same criteria that we have used in past RFQ calls and interview processes. We scored great level presentations, I think, across the board. Heard, including from George Butler and Associates and Olson, our 2 existing firms. They scored the highest. We tested the feeling about renewing with 2 firms instead of just 1 again. We asked the 2 firms how they feel about that arrangement, and each of them had a very similar answer that we think it works well, it avoids conflict of interest, it provides flexibility. So everyone felt of one mind, I think, about choosing the 2 top scorers of this process and moving forward with the contract with George Butler and Woodson. Kristen,
well, Kristen and I were on.
Yeah.
I thought it went really well.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, for sure.
It sure was, and I appreciated the other members of the committee. I thought it was very good to have the additional members, and he did a great job of both. Laura, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a good process.
Looking over the years where we've used 2 firms, and those 2 in particular complement each other, and there's a lot of upfront work that, to me, once they get into this city, if it's a 3-year period, they don't have to come back and do all the initial cost element of the project at the beginning of it, because they've already got it. They've already got the background and knowledge of the city, so that's helpful.
Because it seems like everybody has a really good relationship with them, too, and I think that's important to both knowing as well.
The other thing was that we were able to see some of the other firms, so that if there are individual projects that we might want to farm out to those firms for a particular purpose, there was some interest.
No, absolutely. I think we saw some things, and again, it's about relationship building and building that history, and I think we did see some things that piqued our interest in terms of can we start to build some relationships and understand some of that other expertise, because the fresh set of eyes is helpful as well.
It was the asset inventory we were talking about as possibility of having the other firm.
And we've had the whole time, Ron.
And we've had a very productive follow-up meeting with them on on just that subject. So.
Is 3 years the current length that we're in right now?
It was 3 with an option to renew for the 4th, which we did do the 4th, so this will be.
Is there Is there a difference between Olson Incorporated and Olson and Associates?
They changed their name.
They changed their
And I have a new fancy logo.
Okay, I figured.
Yeah, I took the associates, they're just Olson.
Just
Yeah,
Olson.
Just Olson.
And Brian, thank you for your work on this too.
And is that selection procedure one we've used before, the committee makeup?
Yeah. With some variation maybe, but yes. Comparable.
It's good.
This should move forward.
Yeah, I think it should move forward.
On the regular,
Yeah, not
non-consent.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next item is purchase a vehicle for community development department, Brian Scott.
Laura's got laryngitis and I got this ringing in my ears. It's just driving me nuts.
Tinnitus. It's gonna be that time of night, right?
This summer during the budget process, we talked with you all about the need for hiring a building official. You gave us the consent to move in that direction. We've gone through an interview process and we've made an offer to somebody. And we're going through background checks right now. But to get ready for that, I wanted to go ahead and purchase a vehicle, which we did talk about this summer during the budget process and approved and made an adjustment to the 2018 current budget. We have a step back, the Mid-America Council of Procurement Professionals, which is associated with MARC. It's made up of cities in the region on both sides of the state line. Every year they do a joint vehicle bid, and the joint vehicle bid this year was awarded to Shawnee Mission Ford. So we just went directly to them for a quote, and we quoted a Ford Escape SE with a series of options on it, and the grand total came to $21,592. This quote expires tomorrow. So I did go ahead and get a quote for a 2019, which would be $753 more. It would be a total of $22,345. So in addition to that, approximately $1,000 for the detail work and lights. So this would be very similar to what we already have with neighbor services officers.
Is this position a Danielle replacement?
Correct.
And that's where they'll work in that office?
Yeah.
Any questions?
How many miles do you anticipate this part like, traveling in a given? You guys go drive everywhere a lot.
The city
or
is
this
4
position.
Well, small city.
Small city, but I'm just curious how much use we're going to get in a given year from this particular vehicle.
I bet we'd be lucky if we put 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it, just given how small the city is.
It'll last a while.
Yeah.
Well, that one lasted for like 20 years.
Yeah, we had an S10 Chevrolet pickup truck that I think we still have it. It's down the public works department now. It's got like 20,000 miles on it. It's
And you also use it for
15 years old.
Go to meetings.
Yeah, occasionally we will. If we have a meeting out of town, we'll take that vehicle to go to the meeting. But the primary use is for the neighborhood service officers to go about their duties in the city, and it'd be for the building official to go about his duties within the city.
Move it to
Consent, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, department updates. Not sure who's doing that. Are you doing it?
No more updates, no more
I
talking.
will tell you, just be prepared because our agendas are incredibly full in December also.
All right.
Just a quick reminder, if you haven't told Martha, Horizons has a Thanksgiving luncheon on Friday. I know I'm going. And Rushton has its auction, its fall festival and auction Friday night from 5 to 8.
At Lucky River again?
No, it's at Rushton.
Oh, at the school.
Okay. At the school.
Did we get invitations for that?
I don't know, but I had one council, I wanted to tell you guys they needed help. I've been giving them water and I'm gonna help that night.
Did you last year? Was the auction at Lucky
Usually
River?
it's not, it's been at the community
Or was that
center.
with the PTA?
Did we adjourn?
Well, this is the PTA.
It is.
Oh, yeah. I'm officially.
It's different.
adjourning the-
This is a different event.
Oh, it's different, okay.
We haven't gotten anything